think Tevez going to Juventus, what a coup that was for me. I mean,
on a head-to-head battle, Atletico Madrid can do more damage to Barcelona than the other way around.
Either he's really blind or he's fixing the match. I can't see it any other way.
I'm trying to get Sir Bob on my side here by saying City will win the Premier League.
it is an upset. You would expect Man United to go and win there.
Over $1 billion was paid in transfer fees between the clubs in Europe.
It's football. It's damn football. Like Ferguson said, football. Bloody marvellous.
Yeah, well, the celebration was, I can't believe I just scored against Mexico. At one point, Parma, I think it's only like 224 players under contract. So they're going to throw me out of here, fellas. You're going to get me arrested on your show.
If you're a serious talent, you're going back and you're playing for Santos. You know, you're going back to play for, like in Argentina, for River Plate or Boca Juniors, or you're going to Europe.
He looked like the Ryan Giggs of old. He was more creative than any player on the pitch. He made Mata look stupid. He made Rooney look silly.
Now, the Premier League is the most exciting league out there. I think it's probably the best marketed league without a question.
When you look at the draw for the Champions League, you kind of say, well, all the pieces kind of fell into place for everybody except City.
I am your host, Joe Usello. Sir Bob, Mike Orr. My co-host, Rob Rojas. My trusted co-host, Ben the Machine.
Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary. Pour a cheerful toast and fill it, happy anniversary. But be careful you don't spill it, happy anniversary. Oh, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary, happy anniversary.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the 2-year anniversary episode of Low Limit Football on this September 7th, 2015. I am your host, Joe Usello, and excited to have been doing this for 2 years overall. It's been a lot of fun. It's been a great ride, and we are certainly going to celebrate tonight with the guest lineup that we have this evening. Coming on first, the oldest, I guess, member of the trio here, Rob Rojas. Rob, how are you tonight?
I'm doing well, Joe, and I'm thankful for being a part of Low Limit Football for the last year and hope to do that more in the future.
There you go. I'm glad to have you. And our most recent, I guess, addition would be Sir Bob, Mike Orr. So, Mike, what's going on tonight?
I really appreciate you saying that Rob's older than me. Thank you.
It's the only time I'm ever going to say that. I also, like Rob is mentioning to me in the chat, I would be remiss not to mention the original co-host on this show, which is Ben the Machine, and is still currently in the intro. I hope he has a chance to listen tonight. I haven't talked to Ben very much recently, so hopefully he is around and listening in. He's always welcome to pop in and say hello. He's always welcome to pop in and say hello no matter what. But we got a great show tonight. Just to give you guys an idea of the guest list, we have, coming up in a few minutes, Sid Lowe to talk about Spanish football. Really excited to talk to him tonight. We have never had him on before. Soon after that, we're going to have Gabriel Marcotti. We're going to have Jonathan Johnson from beIN Sport, Nima Tavallaey from Semper Inter, and from Gianluca DiMarzio. We were able to pre-record an interview with Brian Sciaretta tonight, and we're going to have that playing about 7:15. Jeremy St. Louis from beIN Sports going to join us, Jon Arnold, Juan Arango, and we're going to close out the guest list tonight with Leander Schaerlaeckens. Wow. I don't know how the heck we're going to be able to get through 9 guests. So just some simple format changes for all our listeners tonight. The league coverage, not going to happen. And it didn't matter because there weren't any league matches to really talk about anyway. I know we had the Euro qualifiers going on over the past 4 or 5 days. We're not going to talk about those either. And we're actually not going to have any trivia tonight, Mike, so we're going to give you the night off on that one. The one thing we are going to do is we are going to hit an opening thoughts topic. We are going to just go heavy on interviews this evening and maybe do some closing thoughts. We may get a special surprise visit from Ray Hudson towards the end of the show, which I'm hoping does happen, which would be really cool. But other than that, we are going to be guest heavy and guest friendly tonight. So, Rob, any thoughts you want to add into the program lineup before we jump into the show?
No, I just want to mention everyone that's listening in, everyone from Babel, from Read Everything, the companies that I write for, from everyone that's listening onto the show for the last year or so, the ones that have been listening for the last few months, a few days, maybe just tuning in for the first time ever. We really are thankful to have the opportunity to have such listeners.
One thing I do want to add, like you said, we've had Luca, Liam, Zach Dripkin from Vavel, who's been listening quite a bit lately and helped us out with our poster for tonight's show, which showed all our guests. Great work, Zach, and we really, really appreciate it. Jim is in the chat, Year Zero Soccer. Always glad to have him. And he's actually like our closer or our relief pitcher in case somebody happens to bow out last second. Jim has already offered to say, hey, I'll jump on and talk to you. We get Debbie Santos, who listens in quite a bit. Edmund Neeson. I'm missing. I'm missing. I'm sure I said Luca and Liam. If I didn't, Luca and Liam always are in the chat. Anybody that I'm missing, guys, I can't think of off the top of my head.
Hotshot.
Oh, yeah, Hotshot. Troy has been listening since day one.
The two Daft Yanks.
Yep, two Daft Yanks. Chad Smith and Corey Chatelaine will come in from time to time as well and listen, and we've gotten to work with those guys a couple times, and those guys have been fantastic. We also opened the MLS season with those guys and did a special podcast, so thanks to them for always being there for us and helping us out. And being avid listeners of the show as well. So let's jump into our opening thoughts topic, gentlemen. And this one's a pretty simple one. It's one that came to mind when we thought about doing a 2-year anniversary show. Your favorite moment from the past year. So obviously since last September, we've had plenty of funny moments, plenty of serious moments. We've had long shows. We've had short shows. So, I mean, I have one of my own. If you guys want me to start out with my moment, I can do that, or if one of you guys wants to jump in first.
No, go ahead, Joe.
All right, I guess I'll go first. My moment, was kind of an edgy moment for me, and I didn't know what to do. Normally, when we have guests on here, we're pretty big suck ups no matter what, and it's just a matter of treating the guests with respect. Knowing that they take time out of their busy day to come talk to us. So we're really grateful for that, and a little bit of sucking up because of that. Whatever, it is what it is. But we did have a moment on this show which elicited some pretty heated passion. It was started to, some people tweeted about it as the show was going on, and it was back in episode 75 this past June.
I wasn't involved though, right?
You were most certainly involved. It was the discussion between Suleiman Fullerin, Juan Arango, who will be on a little later on tonight, and you, Sir Bob, about the FIFA scandal and the discussion on how to clean up FIFA and everything that's going on. And it got really, really heated. And I'm like, oh my God, are we gonna piss off our first guest? Is this gonna happen? We're gonna be blackballed for the first time. But the great thing about the discussion that night and what I've learned is that people feel passionate about this for a reason, and they're not afraid to show their passion. And I think that's what happened in that discussion. And there was no anger. It was almost like an Italian discussion, just a lot of loud yelling. But in the end, it's just that everybody had their volumes turned up. It wasn't something that people were getting mad at each other. At least that's how I felt. And it was a great, great discussion. It was episode 75. It was back at the beginning of June. It's on our YouTube feed. It's not on our website because we didn't even have a website at that point yet. But that was my moment where at first I was like, oh man, this is serious, because Juan Arango is the same guy that we used to be a little uptight about interviewing people. And then Juan comes on and he's like, hey, come on, let's go have some fun. Let's go BS and blah, blah, blah. And just made it enjoyable. So it was kind of a little bit of a 180 for me in terms of the way Juan and people interacted on the show. So
are you sure that wasn't Rob?
I'll go back and listen.
No, I wasn't involved. Not as much, at least.
So which one of you guys wants to go next in terms of your moment of the year?
I'll go for
Of the year?
Yeah, of the past year.
Okay. Well, I hope this has to follow this calendar year because I've only been here that long. Mine was when being a TFC fan, obviously, it was when we got the captain of Toronto FC, Stephen Caldwell, to come on to the show. And a lot of times when you meet someone that you respect or admire as a player, they're not the person that you thought they were, but Steven definitely was that. And a lot more, as you guys know, he's helped me out a few times with TFC stuff. So, yeah, mine would be Stephen Codwell.
Yeah, and I think that's a great one, Mike. We've got to remember that one of the goals that we had set for the beginning of the calendar year for this show was that I wanted to have somebody who was an active, live player of a football team, of a professional football team, on the show. And it was like just a few weeks later, it was like, boom, Stephen Caldwell. And I'm like, oh my God, this is so awesome. Because at the time when he agreed to come on the show, not only was he a member of TFC, he was the captain. And he actually had the captaincy removed from him. I think, Mike, if I remember correctly, it was like days before he came on the air.
Yeah, we didn't bring it up, but he said we could have. See, that's the kind of guy he was, but we just didn't.
And he's been a wonderful fan a friend of the show. He's been on another time since then, and we're always happy to have him. Like you said, he helped out. I think that's a great choice for moment of the year for us. So, Rob, you're last on the list, buddy.
You know, I actually have two moments I want to mention.
Okay.
Obviously, having been here for the entire year, I have more, I guess you could say, longevity than what Mike had when he came in the beginning of 2015. I think my first one has to be when one of our guests, who will be coming on in about an hour and a half, put our name onto the American TV market. Mentioning Low Limit Football on beIN Sports.
Yes.
Not once, but twice.
Yes. And that led to me actually being interviewed by beIN Sport for the simulations that Mike ran. That's a great one, because that really started to kind of open things up for us in terms of where, people recognizing us and recognizing the names. And I think that's actually gone a long way for us, fortunately. And we're ever grateful to everyone at beIN Sport, especially to Jeremy St. Louis, who Rob just the other night mentioned us on his Periscope broadcast just before the Express Extra, and between him and Brittany Arnold, and then I tweet to Brittany a few minutes later, and she's like, "Yeah, man, I'll come on anytime you guys like." So I know we'll have Brittany Arnold on soon from beIN Sport.
We're definitely thankful to, I guess you could say, mission complete when we got Matteo Bonetti on a couple of weeks ago.
He was the toughest one, man. You know, he's like he's so elusive, and he finally got him on.
I'll give you the order of all the guests that we've had on beIN Sport. George DeMatteis, Jeremy St. Louis, Ian Joy, Andres Cordero, Kay Murray, Matteo Bonetti. Oh, no, sorry. Phil Shane, Ray Hudson, Kay Murray,
and Matteo. And we also, and at the time when we were pursuing him, he was with beIN, but then left, and it's Ross Dyer. Ross Dyer was also with beIN Sport at the time. So,
Ross Dyer as well.
Yep. So
and Solomon Foreman. Solomon.
Yep, Solomon Fuller, and that's right. He's another one as well. So I know. I mean, the people at beIN Sport have been more than generous with us. I mean, even tonight with Jeremy coming on, and Jonathan Johnson, you've got to remember he's a contributor to beIN Sport as well. So, and the potential having Ray Hudson a little later on. I mean, they've been nothing but wonderful for us, and they've been. I mean, Rob, you and I do the heavy lifting for the guest work. I help and Mike helps as well, but you definitely do the heavy lifting. I would say that of all the outlets and all the people that we contact, beIN has always been the most accessible and the easiest to work with to get a guest. They've been wonderful, and they talk to each other. They really seem like a family over there, and then they feed that back into us. So they've been out of this world, and we can't thank them enough.
And we're also thankful to have various media outlets to be on the show. We had Arlo White of NBC, Eric Winaldo of Fox, ESPN, various people from various media outlets in the United States, and even in the UK as well.
Marcelo
No
Balboa.
Canada though, right?
Not yet.
Not yet.
Kurt Larson
Those
soon,
Canadians
right?
are supposed to be so nice, and we can't get any of them.
Kurt Larson soon, but you had
He's American, but he works in Canada.
What,
that's the problem.
Rob, you said you had a second.
Yeah, that was the second.
Oh, that was the second. That was the second. Okay, so so that's again we've had such great luck and with all of our guests and all the outlets we worked with. Yeah, we've had all the majors on. We've had ESPN, we've had Fox, we've had NBC. We've had Univision because Marcelo Balboa does some commentary for Univision. We've had South American. We've had Jotita Bernabe, who does a lot of Paraguayan football for us. We have Ralph Hanna. We've had Sam Kelly. who covers Argentina for us, Roy Neymar. We have Joel Cardenas, who's come on, and who covers Barcelona, who now has his own podcast, which is a great listen as well. So, we've been very, very fortunate. I do want to send one quick shout out before I ring Sid Lowe, and that's a congratulations to Jim Hart. He's in our chat right now. The first time Iceland has ever made the finals of a major tournament happened this week. So, congratulations to Jim. And, I'm sure they're going to have a great tournament moving forward. And they're certainly one of the dark horses to go far.
Jim just pointing out that you missed Leginho himself.
Tim Vickery.
Tim Vickery. I've also missed the Conradinho.
Yep.
With Jimmy Conrad. Tommy Smith. I mean, the list is so long over the past year. Rob wrote a great article this morning on the Low Limit Football website, and at the end, he did list all the, all the different guests that we've had. 56, and I don't know if that's the whole list. There might be one or two missing there. Ada Dizdar, who I see is in the chat, who we had on last week, was awesome, and he's got to be pretty happy because Turkey won. Turkey beat it yesterday. They beat the Netherlands yesterday, so he's got to be really excited about that. I mean, we've been very, very fortunate. And Ada was great last week as well, guys.
It's fantastic.
Yeah, so I'm going to hit the call button here, and let's see if and we can get our first guest of the evening on the show. And we did reach out to him and talk to him a little while ago to make sure that we were good to go. So
easily one of the best.
Hello. Hi, and welcome to Low Limit Football. Sid Lowe, how are you tonight?
Very well, thank you.
Good. Thanks for coming on our 2-year anniversary show and joining us. We really, really appreciate it. I want to start out quickly with a simple question on La Liga. And I was doing a little bit of research and noticed with La Liga, the last 6 years in a row, to win the goal-scoring title, you had to be named Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi. Apparently that was the qualification. The last person not named as Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi to win the scoring title was Diego Forlan in 2008-2009. So my question to you to open the show is, who do you see winning the goal-scoring title in La Liga this year? And if it's not Cristiano Ronaldo or Lionel Messi, who would be that next person that you think could do it?
Well, it's a particularly pertinent question at the moment because last weekend in the round of games, the second week in the season, Ronaldo and Messi failed to score just as they failed to score in the first 2 weeks of the season. And that's the first time that those two players have gone 2 consecutive weeks without getting a goal in 6 years. In other words, in the entire time that both of them have played in the Spanish league. I think it would be very unwise, given that record that you pointed out, and it's 3 top scorer awards each over those 6 years. It would be very unwise, I think, to suggest that anyone other than those two would finish top scorer. It will depend, I think, very much on Cristiano Ronaldo's evolution with this Real Madrid team. We've seen him, I think, over the last year becoming more and more a number 9, a guy who's picking up the ball much closer to the penalty area than he used to, that's finishing moves off rather than necessarily being involved in them as much as he once was. And the question mark, I suppose, is where that evolution takes him this season and whether Madrid can fit him in to their routine. I would right now probably still say Ronaldo may well outscore Lionel Messi. It's not to say it'd be more important they may outscore him. And if you're going to go for another man, I suppose at the moment the obvious choice is the guy that was closest to him last year, which is Antoine Griezmann, who had a brilliant second half of the season last season and has started this season very, very well indeed.
I agree. Griezmann has definitely shown for Atletico Madrid, and no reason to think that he won't continue his goal scoring prowess there. So I'm going to send you over to Mike Orr. I know Mike has a quick question for you, so Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Sid. Thanks for joining us tonight.
Pleasure.
I guess my question is, on Saturday, Spain defeated Slovakia 2-0 to move back to the top of the group. And I guess they're not quite back to the form of 2008 or 12 yet. But one of the things that Spain showed on the weekend was they still have one of the most dominant midfields in the world. The standout for me on Saturday was David Silva. He played in the middle rather than on the flanks. What does he mean to this team? And do you think it's time that he's going to shine on the international stage?
Yeah, I think the game at the weekend was very significant. I mean, obviously, it was significant fundamentally because of the result, and Spain were actually genuinely under quite a lot of pressure to get a good victory. Because had they been beaten, they would have found themselves in a position in which it's perfectly plausible that they may not have qualified automatically and would then have been forced for the playoffs. But I think just as significant for Spain was the sense that while they'd won 5 out of 6 in the qualification round so far, they hadn't really convinced. And I think what we saw at the weekend was a team that convinced for the first time, that really dominated a game, that looked a little bit more like the team that won the European Championships twice in the World Cup, and looked a little bit less like the team that crashed out at the 2014 World Cup. They moved the ball extremely well, they were quick, they were incisive with their passing. And as you say, I think one of the most interesting things was seeing David Silva not just play well, but play well in a central role. He really was a number 10, whereas with Spain he's tended to be one of the front three, normally to either the left-hand side or the right-hand side. The question mark now, as you've raised there, is what's his role going to be? Now, I think we've seen with the superb start to the season he's had for Manchester City, and indeed the superb City career so far, that maybe he could take on that central role more often. Because it's curious when you watch Silva that while he's an enormously talented player, while he's a player who's played, I think it's close to 85 games for the Spanish national team, while he's been important for them, scored, for example, in the final of the European Championships in 2012, we've never really felt, at least I speak for myself, and I think that speaks for others as well, that he's been a kind of a central figure for the Spanish national team. We've talked much more about Xavi, about Iniesta, even about people like David Villa. And I think maybe now he's the guy that perhaps can give them that they've been lacking since the World Cup. Now, that involves a slight shift in formation, a very, very slight shift in style. But the evidence of the weekend, and I'm not going to say that evidence says they can always do it, the evidence of the weekend suggests that it's certainly something that Del Bosque would probably be well advised to consider.
Yeah, I agree. And his start for City, certainly, like you pointed out, has been extraordinary. He already has 4 assists. So,
yeah, he's been fantastic.
Thanks a lot, Sid, for joining us on this anniversary. I'm going to send you over to Rob now. He has a question for you. Thanks again.
Okay, pleasure.
Hola, Sid. ¿Qué tal? First, I do want to mention thank you for coming on the show, as always, being our first guest. I just have a few questions. Firstly, I want to mention about a club that in a city where you're currently at now, in Oviedo, and the club Real Oviedo. Obviously, they recently got promoted back to the Liga Adelante this season, and with the amount of support that various people are having, the shareholders, etc., and stuff like that, do you think they have the capability of possibly going back to the Spanish First Division for the first time in, I believe, 15 years?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, relegated at the end of 2001. I think the second division is a very difficult division to predict. And certainly, for example, if you look at last season, we saw Sporting Gijón come up directly. Didn't even have to come through the playoffs. A team that at the start of the season had been built supposedly to survive, and yet with an extremely strong defence that far outdid anyone's expectations. You see quite often big teams, historically big teams in the second division, unable to perform the way they would like. I personally think that if Oviedo can maintain the consistency of last season, I think the team they had last season, even the second division B, would be good enough to survive in the first division. There's been a huge number of signings in the summer. I think it's 9 in total. And one or two really stand out. Rios, who's on loan from Real Sociedad, was fantastic yesterday in Oviedo's first win of the season. So I think there is a possibility of them getting into the playoffs, or I don't think being promoted directly, but getting into the playoffs. And certainly we're talking about a club, I think, with a significant enough fan base, with the stability now, certainly on a financial level, to be able to go up. I think with a squad that's good enough to go up, and certainly the manager of Lugo, Luis Milla, who played against Oviedo on the first game of the season, said, look, with what they've got, this is a team that could be pushing for promotion. I think it will happen. I don't know if it'll happen this season, but I think Oviedo will be back in the first division before too long, although I am, of course, now reaching for something wooden to touch because I don't want to jinx it.
Exactly, of course. And it would be great for the various people who have been involved in the club for the last few seasons to see that accomplishment. And just my last question before we close you out. Obviously, Barcelona were unable to get the Septemto for their second ever time, having failed to win the Spanish Supercopa, but they will be looking to get the FIFA Club World Cup in December in Japan. And just a quick question here, and simple as this: can Barcelona have the capability to retain a treble?
I personally think that the difficulty for Barcelona will be the first half of the season more than the second half. Now, traditionally, obviously, we talk about leagues being won in the final weeks of the season. Of course, cups are won in the final weeks of the season because, by definition, that's when semi-finals and finals are played. But I think the challenge for Barcelona will be whether or not they can withstand the demands of these opening weeks of the season. This is a club with a very, very short squad, who have signed 2 players, but of course those 2 players cannot play until January, who on top of their normal league duties have Champions League and Copa del Rey duties, but on top of that have, as you've mentioned, the World Club Championships. They've played 2 European Super Cup, 2 Spanish Super Cup games and a European Super Cup game already, and in the first half of the season go away from home to all of the big sides in Spain: Valencia, Athletic Bilbao, Atletico Madrid, Real Madrid, Sevilla, Villarreal. And I personally think that this first half of the season, until January, when Alex Vidal and Arda Turan are able to play for them, will feel extremely long for Barcelona. And because of that, I think it's unlikely that they will win a treble this season. Not because of what they will or won't be able to do later on, but because I think there is a risk that the first half of the season will take such a significant toll on them that they may well be in a position where we're turning it around in the second half of the season is that bit more difficult even than it was last year.
Yeah, of course. It'd definitely be more difficult. And you see various teams all around Spain straightening, the Madrid clubs, the Valencia clubs, and various other clubs around the country. So it's going to be tough. It's going to be interesting, but it's always going to be fun. That's the conclusion.
That's for sure. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. Sid, muchísimas gracias. Ojalá que tenemos a ti otra vez en el futuro. I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thank you, Rob. Sid, I'd like to close it out with one last final quick, easy question for you. And again, thank you for giving us some time tonight. Simple question. Who is your choice to win La Liga this year?
Well, I mean, it leads on a little bit to my answer to the previous question. I think that while, if you look at Barcelona at the back end of last season and you look at the quality they've got 1 to 11, I think you would say, well, Barcelona have to be considered favourites. But I believe that the slight lack of strength in depth, I think the lack of alternatives should key players be injured. I think the difficulty of that first half of the season may well mean that retaining the league title is just that step too far for Barcelona. Now, of course, they can win it, but I think my money would be probably on Real Madrid this season rather than Barcelona in La Liga. Now, I think if Barcelona can get through to January in the Champions League, then of course they will be among the favourites, possibly the favourites for the Champions League. But I think in La Liga, the way that the fixture list has fallen and the specifics of Barcelona's transfer ban mean that I think they probably will not retain the title.
I agree. That I think as long as Barcelona can survive to the next transfer window, I think the tables could easily be turned. But
exactly right. I feel like the judgment on whether or not Barcelona can win the league is if they reach January and they're not in too bad physical shape and they're within touching distance, then I think we can then reassess and say they're favourites to win the league. But I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to reach that point in the kind of position that I anticipate, although who knows, that I anticipate that Real Madrid and possibly even Atletico Madrid will be in.
No doubt about it. Sid, thank you again for joining us on our 2-year anniversary. We really appreciate you coming on and taking the time, and love to have you back soon.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And that was Sid Lowe. Fantastic. What a great person to have on. Just an enormous presence in the world of football, especially covering Spain, and we're very, very lucky to have him on. It's amazing. This show actually, guys, is going to be kind of anticlimactic because I think our 2 biggest guests in terms of their popularity are on first and second, and believe it or not, our next guest is already up and ready. I think we should just go to him. What do you guys think?
Let's do it.
All right, so. We'll make sure we had him on here quickly. But again, another person that I'm very, very excited. He actually there was a segment on. Hello, Gab Marcotti. How are you tonight?
Good, man.
Good. Thanks for joining us on our 2-year anniversary. I was just mentioning to the guys how part of what you said, especially about Parma, when you were on our show the last time, actually made it to our intro music in our opening clip. So we're really excited to have you on. I want to open the questioning quickly with Gigi Buffon. Obviously, Italy coming off their 1-0 victory yesterday in the European Championship qualifiers. Gigi getting a little up in age at the moment. He is currently 37 years old, but still playing quite well. Not quite as great as the old Gigi Buffon, but certainly at a very, very high level. How much longer do you think he has left in the tank, and who do you see as his replacement on the national team?
Well, I mean, I think he's fine for another couple. I think he actually probably had a dip, maybe like 3 years ago. I think quite a noticeable dip, in fact, and I think since then he's back to a very, very high standard. Looking forward, if there's one thing Italy's not really missing right now is sort of young, up-and-coming goalkeepers from Leali to Scuffet's dropped down to Serie B, but he's still extremely young, and the guy's got everybody exciting.
I also thought that
to somebody like.
Go ahead.
Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say Mattia Perin is the guy that kind of came to mind for me.
Mattia Perin is another one who's in the mix. I wouldn't forget Sirigu either, who, this season Blanc's gone with Trapp in goal for PSG, so he might spend some time on the bench. But I think he also has very good fundamentals. So I think right now for Italy, goalkeeping is kind of the least of their problems. I
agree. I agree. But certainly going to be one of the biggest misses once Buffon leaves. It's almost losing a legend, I would say. So I'm going to pass you over to Rob Rojas. I know Rob has a question for you. So Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Yes, hi Gab. It's nice to have you on the show again.
Pleasure, Rob.
Just two things before I go into football, really. I've heard from some people in this chat room that we're having that you were a fan of the old ECW.
I certainly am. I lived in, when I went to college in Philly around the time that Paul Heyman started up the promotion, and I had the privilege to going to shows at the ECW arena for maybe like 12, 15 shows over the years, and it was certainly unbelievable.
Yeah, of course. I would imagine how what kind of moments in football would be if they had like EC dub chants in Premier League matches, for example.
Yeah, well, I mean, I don't think anything quite compares to an EC dub crowd, especially from that era in that context. But there are and Premier League crowds right now, certainly at least in certain grounds, are somewhat muted. But you still get the buzz and the excitement in certain places like Anfield or Upton Park, and yeah, certainly when the electricity's there, you find yourself feeding on it.
Exactly. And I'm just I was always curious ever since I followed you. You've always had the photo of Paul Robeson, the famous singer during the mid 20th century. Is there a reason why he's your profile picture?
I'm just absolutely fascinated by the guy. I've read several biographies on him. I studied him back in school back in the day. Here was a guy who basically did everything. He was an all-American athlete. Phi Beta Kappa scholar at university. Hugely successful singer, and then kind of a major civil rights leader as well. So I just find him to be one of the most incredible figures of surely of the 20th century.
Although it must be some confusion and to be always be mistaken for him as your photo.
This is true, although I mean the fact that I'm on TV should help a little bit, and also a hint is if you click through, you see a picture of me with Gabriel Batistuta.
Yeah,
if you're a football fan, you should know that which one's Batistuta and which one's me.
Yeah, of course. One's a legend and one's Gabriel Batistuta.
Thank you.
Going back to football now. Obviously, we have a great start in the Premier League so far. Obviously, the defending champions Chelsea are not doing so well in the league. Manchester United are catching up there. Liverpool, Arsenal as well. But Manchester City are just going completely taking everything by storm. 4 wins, not conceding a single goal yet. Do you think they have the capability to win the league?
Oh, there's no question that that they have the ability to win the league. I mean, essentially the same set of characters won the league 2 years ago, of course, and they've opened up a sizable gap already. Now there's still obviously a long way to go. Probably the best and deepest squad in the Premier League by some distance. The only thing, I think there's only 2 things that could potentially undo them. One is it's never easy, even for a player's coach like Manuel Pellegrini, to go and manage situations where you've got so much depth, so many stars, and everybody wanting playing time, especially ahead of for the European players ahead of the Euros. A guy like Mangala wants to keep his place for France. Nasri would want to get back in the French team. Navas into the Spain team. De Bruyne for Belgium, and so on. The other thing, which I think could be potentially a bit tricky, is if you look in terms of genuine center forwards, it's really only Aguero and Bony. And of course, Aguero's injury record isn't great. And, should one suffer a longer layoff and the other one maybe get suspended or hurt or whatever, then you're looking at this Nigerian kid, Iheanacho, who's, I think has only played 1 minute so far for the first team, or moving Sterling up top. There are things you can do, but it's not an ideal situation. Certainly most teams who play one up in the Premier League, have 3 viable center forwards, and especially when one of them, like Aguero, as we've seen, has been injury prone in the past.
Yeah, of course, but it will definitely be interesting, and it would make one of our co-hosts right here that you'll be speaking to in a few minutes very happy. I'll tell you that right now. Just one last question. Do you firmly believe that MLS is probably equivalent to leagues such as the Eredivisie or Super League? What do you find it at the moment in regards of how strong it is in the world, like a ranking, so to say?
I find the MLS a little bit tough to judge, in the sense that I didn't get to see a game this year, although I have done in previous summers. So I only catch games on TV, and obviously you get a bit of a skewed view when you're watching on the box. To me, there's 2 things that stand out about MLS. One is I get the impression that that a lot of the defenders or a lot of the defensive, I don't know if it's the defense organization, but simply isn't very good relative to the attacking play. You see a lot of individual mistakes, a lot of positional mistake defensive, and that's a bit surprising, because you would say that it's something that you can normally sort out. Whereas the attacking play, I think is of a decent standard. The other thing about MLS is, and I think which is why it makes it more difficult to compare to Europe, is obviously you've got teams traveling much longer distances, and you don't necessarily have the hierarchy of power. This is one league where the old maxim by which wage bill sort of guarantees success kind of goes out the window. And sometimes you wonder about some of these teams, whether let's say whether they sometimes maybe sacrifice building for the future, or maybe some economic considerations for winning, if they're in a position where they won't make the playoffs, or maybe they're not too bothered if they do get in the playoffs, and that's that to me makes it a bit difficult to read. The level comparable to the Eredivisie, I would say there's 2 ways to look at it. Certainly, I would expect PSV or Ajax to basically walk it in MLS, but that's also because, unlike MLS, the Eredivisie doesn't have a salary cap, right? So that the wealth is very much top heavy, whereas in MLS it's far more spread out. I'd be curious to see how the bottom 6 teams in Eredivisie would perform against the bottom 6 teams in MLS, and I think there the gap would be much closer.
Yeah, absolutely, and all we're here expecting all the Americans here are expecting that it does indeed go well in the future. Gab, I really want to thank you for appearing on the show once again, and I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
My pleasure. Congratulations.
Thank you.
On 2 years.
Thank you.
Hi, Gab. It's Mike in Toronto. How are you doing tonight?
Hey.
I think we're breaking up a little bit, but I'll try and ask my question to you anyways. I read that you recently wrote an article on Wayne Rooney. I guess I should say I recently read your article on Wayne Rooney and how you felt he's not going to be fully appreciated until he's gone. Now, while I agree with you on that, my co-host Joe Usella would not agree with us. So I'm hoping that you maybe could articulate a little better than I to Joe why he is wrong and why me and you are right.
I mean, look, it's not just Rooney. I think it is something peculiar maybe to sports fans, but particularly, here in England. You're the same thing with guys in the past. Tony Adams is an absolute legend today, but at the time, he was, Mr. Donkey, and why couldn't he do better, and blah blah blah, and we've had it with others. Robbie Fowler used to get absurd amounts of stick. Michael Owen. I think with Rooney, it's perhaps a little bit magnified by the fact that, he came onto the scene, made such an enormous splash when he was 17, 18 years old. And, there were people who were talking about him as if he was going to become the best player in the world. And he had the misfortune of being, a couple years older than Lionel Messi and Cristiano, and then obviously those two guys took over, and nobody's even in the same ballpark as him. But when you talk about consistent production over a long, long time, when you talk about silverware, when you talk about sort of basic durability, yes, obviously he's been hurt at a number of major tournaments, but I mean, I think Rooney's pretty darn impressive. With all due respect, this is English football we're talking about. We're not talking about Brazil or Argentina here. I always kind of, you ask yourself, how far back do you have to go to find an English striker, an English center forward that you would take ahead of Rooney? And, I think a lot of people would go, further back than Shearer or Owen or Gary Lineker, and, probably might go all the way back to Bobby Charlton. And if he's on a par with Bobby Charlton, he's done pretty well, I think.
Yeah, I agree, definitely. It would be hard to imagine where England would be in the last, 8 years or so without Wayne Rooney.
Yeah, although I mean the naysayers would point out that his tournament record isn't great. Although obviously he's been unfit in major tournaments, and he still scored 6 goals in major tournaments with England, which I think puts him off the top of my head puts him second behind Gary Lineker in that category. And obviously he's got another 1, maybe 2 tournaments to come, so he can certainly address that gap. But yeah, I just it's the general sort of self-flagellation, which or the masochism that exists here in England, where so many times they have to tear down their own stars. I remember years and years of this sort of, can Lampard and Gerrard play together? Why can't Scholes tackle? Why is Sol Campbell the way he is? And there's a sort of lack of appreciation for the stars that you do have. You build them up into insane levels initially, and then you sort of chip away at them, and that's part of the reason why. I mean, a lot of guys have spoken about this. A lot of England players don't enjoy playing for the national team because they kind of feel all this pressure, and they feel it's a lose-lose proposition.
Yeah, I think it's a lot like, I'm in Canada, so it's a lot like hockey here. If we don't win, then the whole program's gone bad.
Yeah, well, and I'll add something else to that. I mean, Canada hockey, and again, hockey's not really my sport, but correct me if I'm wrong, it's either you guys or the Russians, or, you are one of the top 2 or 3 in the world.
Yeah, that's true.
Yeah, that's not England in football. They're deluded and crazy if they think that they're the top 2 or 3 in the world, because they aren't. And that makes it worse, right? So they go out in the quarterfinals, and everybody complains. I mean, between 2002 and 2006, England reached 3 straight quarterfinals in major tournaments. It's the greatest spell ever of the English national of the international team since '66. And yet, they still go and complain, and the golden generation's a bust, and blah, blah, blah. And, sometimes they lose sight of the fact that, other countries play football as well and are pretty darn good at it.
Okay, Gab, thanks a lot for giving me your answer to that question. I'm sure Joe might have a little rebuttal, and thanks again for joining us tonight on our second anniversary.
It's my pleasure, boys. Well done.
I'm gonna let it go. Gab, thank you again for joining us. I know I personally enjoy watching you come on ESPN all the time, and thanks for joining us again, and hopefully we'll get to talk to you again soon.
Thanks so much, guys. Keep up the good work.
Thank you.
Cheers. Take care.
And that was Gab Marcotti from ESPN. Fantastic to have him on. I'm going to take it, guys, if you guys don't mind. Our next guest is actually ready.
Go for it.
So we'll go ahead and add him into our Skype call here at the moment and get him on right away, because this is another person that I really enjoy talking to all the time. So joining us on our 2-year anniversary of Low Limit Football from BN Sport is Jonathan Johnson. Jonathan, how are you tonight?
I'm very well, thanks, guys, and yourselves?
Oh, fantastic! Again, you're always one of our favorite guests to have on, and always so knowledgeable. So we really appreciate you taking the time to come on tonight. I'm going to open with a quick question on PSG. I know we're about 4 or 5 weeks into the season in Ligue 1. For me personally, there's not a question of if PSG will win the title. So my question to you is, when will PSG win the title? And more, not necessarily who will challenge them, but how far will they go in the Champions League play this year?
Well, I think that PSG could have the title sewn up earlier than they have done, certainly at any time under the Qatari owners. It's looking at the way that Lyon and Monaco have started the season. If they can find their feet, get into a rhythm and start picking up points, if they can keep the current gap as it is with PSG and perhaps even close it, then, of course, it's going to take PSG longer to win the title. But at the moment, it certainly looks as if it's something that they could tie up, quite early on in 2016, perhaps sort of around March time. And I definitely think that the bigger the gap between PSG and their title challengers, the likes of Lyon, the likes of Monaco, the bigger that gap is come the latter stage of the Champions League, and I think that PSG will get out of their group. I think it's a tough draw game for them, like last year was with Barcelona, this year getting Real Madrid, but I still think that they will advance as one of those top 2 teams, and I think that we could see PSG going past the quarter-final stage, finally getting to the semi-finals, perhaps even going a bit further than that, and I think that will be aided by the fact that they'll be able to put to fully concentrate on the Champions League over Ligue 1, because I think that they'll have such a commanding lead in the league by that point that they'll be able to fully focus themselves on their continental commitments.
I agree with you. I also think adding the piece of Angel Di Maria to that mix is a great component to them maybe advancing a little further than where they've usually been to. My only concern would be that they would fall into the Bayern Munich trap, for lack of a better term, where a couple of years ago they had wrapped up the Bundesliga so early that they kind of put everything on cruise control, and they couldn't really ramp it back up when they got back into Champions League play, and it cost them. So that would be my only tale of caution for PSG moving forward. But I agree with you 100%. So I'm going to send you over to Mike Orr. I know Mike has a question for you, so Mike, go ahead.
Hi, Jonathan. It's Mike in Toronto. Thanks for joining us tonight.
No, thanks for having me on.
I guess my question is about the 19-year-old teenager, obviously, that Manchester City just signed, Anthony, and excuse my pronunciation here, Martial from Monaco. And while the fee was rather large, I guess that's not really what I would like to ask you about. I would like to ask you if you think it was a good move for him, and do you think LVG is the right man to develop this type of talent?
Yeah, well, it was certainly a surprise when United came in and stumped up all of that cash for Martial. I have to say that I don't think Louis van Gaal is the right kind of coach to get the best out of Martial. Martial really needs to be nurtured. He's a player who has plenty of potential. However, I think he really needs a coach who can work well with youngsters and who can really put an arm around his shoulder, show him where he goes wrong occasionally in the game, and really help him to bring his game on. And I think the combination of a real disciplinarian like Van Gaal, going to a club like United, who are under a lot of pressure at the moment, certainly after what had turned out to be a bit of a disappointing summer really on the transfer window. It's been a relatively slow start to the season as well. Certain key players in the team struggling for form, and not many striking options. So that, and handing a 19-year-old the number 9 shirt, there's so much expectation on Martial's shoulders. Coming into his Manchester United career, it's really difficult to see him, being given the time to find his feet before people start criticising him. I mean, he hasn't even kicked a ball yet, and I'm seeing already that newspapers are branding him a waste of money, which is just absolutely ridiculous. And I think, although it's understandable that United were interested in Martial, as were a number of European clubs this summer and last. He's he at the moment he's just a potential talent, and I think many people are expecting him to hit the ground running and start banging in the goals for United as soon as he pulls on the shirt for the first time. And I'm not sure that's going to happen, and I'm going to find it interesting to see just how patient the fans are at Old Trafford before they start laying into him and complaining.
Yeah, no, I would agree, and I also agree that I don't think Louis van Gaal's the right type of manager to develop him, and I also think that the Manchester United fans, I think I said Manchester City at the beginning, sorry if I did, the Manchester United fans probably aren't going to give him the time given where they've been in the last 2 years, so it'll be, like you said, it would be interesting to see what happens with him. I'm going to hand you over to Rob now. He has a question for you, and thanks again for joining us tonight.
Oh, thanks a lot for having me on.
Hey, Jonathan, it's nice to have you back on the show again.
Hey, thank you. It's great to be back on. Congratulations to you guys for making it to 2 years.
Thank you so much. You've clearly, as Joe said, you clearly have been one of the best guests alongside Julien Laurens for French football, that I can tell you. The last time we had you on, we were talking about the situation between new goalkeeper Kevin Trapp and Salvatore Sirigu. Obviously, Kevin Trapp has played every single minute for PSG in the new Liga season, and Sirigu has not played a single game yet. So my question to you is, do you firmly believe that possibly we'll see maybe a Barcelona-esque type PSG where Kevin Trapp will play the league matches and Salvatore Sirigu will play in their Champions League group?
I think it's possible. However, I'm not really sure that that's what Blanc has in mind. I think Blanc certainly appears to favour Kevin Trapp at the moment, is very, very happy with how his new acquisition has performed so far this season. And I think that even though there is a certain amount of logic to having one goalkeeper for the league and another for the continental and domestic cup competitions, I don't think that's really what Blanc and PSG have in mind. They made it quite obvious early on that what they intended was for Trapp to come in and for Sirigu to essentially be pushed towards the exit and told that he doesn't really have a future at PSG, but at the moment the Italian is keen to prove that he still has something to offer to PSG. Still thinks that there's perhaps a chance that he'll be able to usurp Trapp as Blanc's first choice goalkeeper. But I think barring injury at the moment or a major loss of form for Trapp, I just don't see that happening, and I don't think that Sirigu is going to get given a chance in Europe. I think it definitely might happen in one of the domestic cups, but that's not even going to be happening for PSG until the very end of the year. So Sirigu really realistically is looking at playing very little football until the January transfer window opens. Trapp has come in. He's looked very assured so far. Admittedly, hasn't been worked that hard in some of PSG's games. Made a very, very good save against Montpellier. Looked very solid against Monaco. But in the other games against the likes of Lille, Gazalec, Ajaccio, he was barely tested. He looks very, very good in the air. He's very strong, and also when he has the ball at his feet, he looks very comfortable as well. And those are two crucial areas that Sirigu is not that good at. So that is where Trapp has really impressed so far in his PSG career. But like I said, it's still quite early days, and he hasn't really been tested that much by some of PSG's domestic opponents. So it's going to be very interesting to see how Kevin Trapp does in the Champions League when PSG kick off their campaign against Malmo next week. There's been suggestions from the German national team goalkeeper coach Andreas Köpke that he's looking at some of the German goalkeepers who are in and around the national team who are playing in Champions League football this season, suggesting that one or two are very close to an international call-up, and I guess that Trapp could be considered in that band. And I certainly think that if he starts his Champions League campaign as strongly as he started PSG's league campaign, then I definitely think that he's got a shout at being called up to the German national team very soon.
Yeah, of course. And going back to Sergio, it has been I guess you could say, a downgrade so far from what he's been accustomed to, especially when I consider him one of the best goalkeepers in the world. Just going back to PSG, and just for my last question, obviously they're pitted into a tough group and a homecoming group. I guess that would be the main subject, having to take on Real Madrid, the return of Angel Di Maria to the Bernabeu, and Malmo, the return of Zlatan to Sweden. Do you firmly believe that possibly that PSG can indeed top the group over Real Madrid? And is it possible that with the side that it has, can dominate Europe and possibly surprise everyone and win the Champions League?
I think it's a lot to ask PSG to go and win the Champions League at the moment, but I definitely think that they can go further than they've gone before. So, I think the semi-finals is definitely a possibility for them. Looking at the group, I think it's a tougher group than last year's. Yes, PSG were drawn with the ultimate, the eventual winners Barcelona last season. However, they also had Apoel Nicosia in the group stage, and it's this time around they've got Real Madrid, Malmo, and Shakhtar Donetsk. So, Real Madrid, on the same level as Barcelona, very challenging opponent. I don't think that they're as difficult as Barcelona, in my honest opinion. But I think that Shakhtar will be a very interesting opponent for PSG, and Malmo as well, although they are quite clearly the minnows of the group. They're still not going to be easy opponents for PSG. However, that said, I do think that although Shakhtar still have a very good team, I think that one thing that plays into PSG's hands is the fact that going to Shakhtar is not really going to be as daunting as it perhaps could be. Shakhtar don't play in Donetsk at the Donbass Arena. They'll be playing at Arena Lviv, which makes that an away game for both sides, really, because Shakhtar aren't able to take many of their fans with them. So that pretty much puts them in this odd position of having to play every game as if it was away from home. Creates a very eerie atmosphere, and I think that that'll take some of the edge off of the game for PSG and make that slightly easier to deal with. I think that Ibrahimovic will be really eager to impress on his return to Malmo, so I expect that he will probably take centre stage there, and his dominance alone should be enough to see PSG through that one. So, I think that this group's going to boil down to those two games against Real Madrid, which come slap bang in the middle of the schedule, and I think that if PSG can win the home game in the same way that they did against Barcelona last season, I definitely think that they've got more than enough to be able to go to the Bernabeu and draw, certainly while Rafa Benitez as well is still trying to get to grips with this Real team. And I think that if they're still in transition at that point, then I definitely think that PSG will fancy their chances of going to Madrid and at least coming away with a draw. And, at the end of the day, that's all they need to do, as long as they don't drop any points unnecessarily elsewhere. We saw last season they did drop points in the first round of games by drawing away at Ajax. And if they'd avoided that, they would have finished level on points with Barcelona at the end of the group stage. So if they can, avoid dropping silly points and just go into those two games against Real Madrid, and come out undefeated over both, then I think that they have a good chance of topping the group.
Yeah, of course. And it would definitely be amazing to see them in play in the San Siro at the end of the May of next year. Jonathan, thank you again for coming on. I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thanks, Rob. And Jonathan, again, I want to thank you as well for coming on and celebrating our 2-year anniversary with us. We always enjoy and appreciate you coming on the show, and always glad to have you back soon.
Guys, thanks a lot for having me on. It's been an absolute pleasure, and I'll speak to you soon.
Fantastic. Have a good night. And that was Jonathan Johnson from Bein Sport. Again, fantastic interview. I always love talking to him. I'm going to actually add our next guest right away, as I know he is up and ready, and we're just keep him flying. So, and somebody that I'm excited to talk to, and I know even guys in our chat room are excited to talk to him as well.
Hello.
Hello. And joining us is Nima Tavallaey from Gianluca D'Amarzio. Nima, it's Joe Cello. How are you tonight?
Hi, Joe. I'm good. Thanks. How are you guys? Thanks for having me on.
Good. No, fantastic, and glad to have you on. I'm going to start you out with a question real quick, and it's a simple one, but it's right up your alley. And it's, like I said, it's really easy. Compared to the rest of Europe, we've just had the close of the transfer window last week. Compared to the rest of Europe, did Inter have the best transfer window of everyone?
No, I think we're definitely amongst the best, but I mean, it's so difficult to say whether or not you've had the best or not, because it's all got to be played out on the pitch as well. Personally, I think that Roma had a fantastic transfer window. They got to hang on to their, to important players, and they brought in Dzeko and Salah, who I think will help them a lot. And also they sold a lot of fringe players they didn't need. They managed to correct all the problems they had in January. And made a huge profit as well. If you look at, according to Transfermarkt, Roma made like 28.7 million profit this window. Inter did a fantastic window. There's no doubt about it. I personally think that Valder Sabatini and Piero Ausilio are the best sporting directors out there. Not just based on this market, but these past few years. Inter did fantastically well. Inter did exactly what they needed to do. They needed a complete new central line from defense all the way up to below Icardi, pretty much. And Inter got everything from Kondogbia to Murillo, Miranda, Jovetic. Basically, Inter did fantastically well. And we made a profit of like 4 million. We sold players for 90 million and bought players for 86.
I agree. For me, I thought just the quality of the players that they added all, on the back line, plus moving into the midfield, I thought they did wonderful, and I think it's going to be the difference for them. And personally, I would pick them to move into the Champions League spots this year.
I got to be honest with you. I think Inter will finish third. Okay. I really do. Well, I do. I think we can ask that of Inter now.
Yeah, I would certainly agree with that. Certainly did better than the other Milan team, don't you think?
I'm a bit surprised at what Milan did. I mean, Milan always likes to go Italian talent and build new. But the amounts of money they paid for Bertolacci and Romagnoli, I don't know. It remains to be seen. I think Romagnoli is good. I think Bertolacci, but they're all good players. But that's a pretty hefty transfer fee. I mean, 26 million for those two, for each of those two, or something like that, as it was. That's a lot of money. That's a lot of money.
Yeah, for all the bad they did with Bertolacci and that money, that they did quite well with Carlos Bacca, I think. But
fantastic. Carlos Bacca is so underrated. I think Luis Adriano and Carlos Bacca will be the strike duo to watch this season, because they're so good and they complement each other so well. I think Ibrahimovic with those two would have been just too much. Yeah. It would have just been too much for them. Like, it would have been like football pornography, pretty much. But no, I think they did. I think Milan did really well. I still, however, if Romagnoli turns out to be the new Nesta, or the next generation of big Italian, huge Italian center backs, which Italy is looking for, and hope that Rugani and Romagnoli can be what Bonucci and Ranocchia failed to become. If they can do that with Romagnoli, then that's fantastic. That's a fantastic piece of business. And they already have Giaccherini. They already have, so Milan definitely want to base their squad like they've always done, with homegrown players, and spice it with some Brazilian flair, and some foreign flair, and if you look at it that way, sure, they've done really well. I just don't think that they have a squad for a top 4 team yet. I don't think they have a squad for the top 4 finish yet.
No, I agree. I'm going to send you over to Rob Rojas. I know Rob has a couple questions for you, so Rob, take it away.
Yes, hi, Nima. It's nice to talk to you again.
Yeah, it's always nice to talk to you.
Yeah, of course. First, I do want to mention, and I want you to be as nice as ever, not offensive at all, as we spoke about. I want you to talk about John Guidetti and what he actually is.
John Guidetti he's a good footballer. He he's a good footballer in the sense that he's a training product. Basically, he's been drilled by his dad since he was like 6, 7 years old to become a football player, and he's sacrificed a lot to get where he is. I just don't think that he has the talent that he thinks he has. Maybe, but I think John Guidetti he's a good player. It's the next generation. Players like these players with that kind of attitude and that they would never have gotten anywhere in Swedish football if it wasn't for the fact that Ibrahimovic kicked open all those doors. Zlatan. We can talk about Zlatan Ibrahimovic, Sweden post and pre Zlatan Ibrahimovic, because not just when it comes to football, but in all aspects, because he kicked open a lot of doors, and he before it was impossible for foreign people with foreign sounding names or to be the way they were. They were indoctrinated and had to adapt to Swedish football, which is heavily influenced by Bob Houghton and Roy Hodgson's 4-4-2 in the 70s and that kind of English football mentality. What Zlatan did was that he just kicked open the door and said, no, you can be technical and be a team player and be successful and be cocky and have attitude and all of that. So, but all these kids that are coming and that the under-21 team that won the European Championships this summer, it's all the Ibrahimovic effect, I would say, because they took a generation for after Ibra for Swedish football to accept and adapt what German football did like 10 years earlier.
Yeah, of course, it's a huge influence, that's for sure. I just want to mention a player that has recently played in La Primavera for a few seasons, and that's Ivorian midfielder Asane de Moya Nukori. What can you tell you can tell about him?
He's a player that Mancini, Inter's Primavera team has always, if you look at the last 10, 15 years, I think what Inter have done, and if you look at the players that have come from Inter's youth team sector, from Santon, Bonucci, Destro, Balotelli, it's unrivaled in Italy. You won't find anything. No other club in Italy has that track record. And what Mancini was actually one of was in charge of Inter to give a lot of those players their first team debuts. Balotelli definitely so. Same with Bonucci and Destro and all these players. He saw something in Nukori that not a lot of other people, that no one knew about, and he decided to field him and make his Serie A debut last season. Again, I think it was against Milan, actually. I think he made his first starting debut in the derby. Yeah, he did, and he was really good. That's something Mancini's really good at. He's really, really good with spotting talent within the clubs he is, and giving them their chance. I mean, Balotelli definitely is a fantastic example of that.
Yeah, of course, he's definitely been one. That's for sure. And just my last question. I was going to make this a bit quick, but what are the chances of Fiorentina faring this season? And quickly, who do you think will finish top 5 in Serie A?
Okay, top 5. I still think Juventus will win. I still think so. I wouldn't count them short. I think that once they find, which I think they already have started to, once they once they start to gel, and Allegri can start to get them to play the football he wants them to do, I think they've bought exactly the right players for them to play that kind of football. So I think that Juventus will win. I think Roma will finish second, but not so distant. I think it will be a nail biter into the end. I think Inter will finish third, Fiorentina fourth, and Milan fifth. And then the first, what was that other question? Sorry.
How will Fiorentina do?
Okay, I think they'll finish fourth. I think Fiorentina under Paulo Sousa have rejuvenated and created a very interesting project. With a very interesting coach, and I think that wants to play free-flowing football, and also maybe a little bit of emphasis on the defense as well, which was hemorrhaging under Montella. So and also getting rid of Mario Gomez and the wages he commanded was very important, because he was he started. People forget that he started off really well, him and Rossi together 2 seasons ago. But then the injuries came, and then after that, it was painful to watch either of them. Yeah. So no, I think Fiorentina will do well. I really believe in the players and the system he plays, and I think he will go down really well in Florence. And I think that he's the right person. He's a winner. Paulo Sousa has won with Juventus, he's won with Inter, he's won with Borussia Dortmund. He's a winner. He knows what it takes to win, and he'll be able to give Fiorentina and their players what they need to finish in the top 4. I think.
Absolutely. Well, Nima, and it's nice to have you on. And as we all agree here, I hope we all agree here, we don't want to see Donald Trump president.
No, I don't. I think the Saturday Night Live people who write for comedy shows and late night shows would love it, because it'd be like a jackpot, a never-ending fountain of punchlines. But as he is a walking punchline. But no, I agree. I think it would be a disaster. I just have this nightmare of a Trump-Palin Republican ticket.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
Hi, Nima. Thanks for being on tonight.
Thanks for having me.
I guess you've already mentioned the elephant in the room, but I'll bring him up again, namely Mario Balotelli. Of course, he completed his loan deal from Liverpool to AC Milan, but reports that he now had his driver's license confiscated after speeding, and I believe there was a special clause put into his loan deal where the club could rescind his contract immediately if there was any transgressions. I'm just wondering, do you think this incident's big enough for that to happen? And how long until we see Mario in the MLS?
I actually think the MLS thing is a very good idea for Balotelli, because I think that kind of environment is good for him, because Italy is poison for him. If you look at his life and what he's gone through and how he was raised, and this is a very angry young man, a very talented angry young man who's got issues that he hasn't dealt with, and I think that and the issue of race in Italy is far more, it's far more in your face if you're a black man than it is in the United States, or in Canada. I don't think that he would be subjected to the same kind of in-your-face racism that he perhaps is in Italy, in the United States. So I think the MLS thing would be amazing, but I doubt that he would want to go there. But then the issue remains, where does he continue to play? Because this is really his last chance. AC Milan now is his very last chance. If he doesn't perform, the way that Mihailovic expects him, and he doesn't do exactly what he wants to do, then he'll be out the door. And Milan are right in doing so, because when it comes to talent, you can't discuss it. There's nothing to say. Balotelli is a fantastic footballer. However, he's just too much. It's as if he's like a Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde. He's got this other side that just does this stupid shit, like firecrackers in the bathroom, and
I'm a Man City fan. I remember that one.
and
or dressing up like Santa Claus and handing out money.
Yeah, but apparently that wasn't true.
Okay.
I saw this interview which Oasis frontman Noel Gallagher did with him, and he went through all these rumors about his antics, and one of those things, apparently that wasn't true.
Okay. I know Noel's a huge Man City fan, so yeah.
Yeah. No, they did an interview for Man City TV, and he just went through all the rumors about urban legends about Balotelli and what he did over there. But yeah, no, apparently it wasn't true. But no, I think that this driving thing, again, I don't think this is as serious enough, because, he got his driver's license revoked. That's fair enough. But it's not. I don't think this is serious enough for the club to rescind his loan contract. I think it would be something else is needed. I'm not saying this helps out. This helps him a lot. or Milan or Mihailovic or whoever, everyone has believed in him and brought him to the club. Excuse me. No, I don't think this helps their cause. However, I can't see they rescinding it for this. There would be something else needed. I think there would be something more needed in order for them to just say, you know what, bye. Because you have to understand, there's a big prestige loss here as well. All summer they've been talking about Jackson Martinez, they've been talking about Ibrahimovic, they've been talking about Kondogbia, and in the end they got Juraj Kučka and Balotelli. So I mean, and it would be a very huge prestige loss if basically 2 weeks after he signed his loan paper he gets kicked out. It wouldn't look good for Galliani at all. I think it would take some more.
Yeah, no, that makes sense, and I agree with you. But I guess that's one demerit in his column, and it wouldn't take too many more.
No, it really doesn't. He's in thin ice already, and I. But the thing is, I like the kid. I mean, I really I just wish that he would be able to project a little bit of the crazy, the saying, there's a thin line between genius and insanity. If he could just project some of that more genius side onto his own life and find some balance and onto the pitch, then I think we're talking world-class footballer here.
I'd love to see some of that insanity in the MLS. Nima, thanks a lot for taking my question tonight, and I'm going to give you back to Joe, and take care.
Thanks, Mike. Nima, again, I want to thank you for coming on our 2-year anniversary show. Always a pleasure to talk to you, and we'll have you back again very, very soon.
Thanks again, and happy 2-year anniversary.
Grazie.
Buon compleanno.
Grazie. Ciao.
Thank you, Nima.
Ciao. Thanks, guys. Have a good show.
Thanks.
And that was Nima Tavallaey from Gianluca Di Marzio. Always fantastic to have him on. I'm going to jump right into it, guys, so we don't get too far off track. And we have our pre-recorded interview with Brian Sciaretta coming up right about now. Joining us now on the 2-year anniversary episode of Low Limit Football is Brian Sciaretta from American Soccer Now. Brian, how are you tonight?
Oh, I'm doing very well. Thank you very much for having me on, and congratulations on 2 years.
Thank you. We're very, very excited about it, and excited that you were able to join us tonight. I'm going to open the questioning real quick with a tweet that you actually had just a couple of hours ago about Jurgen Klinsmann said he's undecided if Jordan Morris is going to be on the U.S. men's national team or the U23 team next month. I'm combining this with the thoughts that in general, many people have like a love-hate relationship with Josie Altidore. So my question to you is, how soon do you think it is before we see Jurgen Klinsmann make Jordan Morris the number one choice at striker for the men's national team?
I mean, the fact that Josie Altidore was the captain the other day against Peru, and he still scored 2 goals despite an up-and-down game. I think it's a long ways before Josie's replaced, particularly against a guy without any professional experience. Josie's still been there through 2 World Cups and World Cup qualifying, and a lot of caps and a lot of goals against big national teams, including Spain. So I think I think all that talk is very premature. I mean, if anyone's going to catch him, it'll be Aaron Johansson, but that's still a little ways off too. I mean, Johansson has now been involved with the program for over 2 years now, he's still now not even a regular starter. He hasn't cemented himself into regular minutes. So it's still Josie and a distance behind between him and everyone else.
I agree. I'm going to send you over to Rob Rojas now. I know Rob has a couple questions for you, so Rob, go ahead and take it away.
Yes, hi, Brian. It's nice to have you on the show.
Well, thank you very much.
I just want to mention something that you've also tweeted about. You tweeted an interview on American Soccer Now about the new player that has recently come on the United States national team, Andrew Wooten. What can you tell about the people who are not familiar about him?
Well, he's versatile. I think he can play out wing and he can play center forward. I think his game is a little more powerful. I mean, whereas a guy like Aaron Johansson, you see him making these nice moves in the box to put himself in good positions for quick goals and open finishes, and he can also hit them from distance as well. Wooten's a little more. While he can play out wing, he's predominantly a center forward that's very big and wide and strong. I mean, and physical. I think he's 25 years old, so he's more of a finished product. It remains to be seen if he's a late bloomer, but he's off to a he's off to an incredible start this season with 5 goals. And he's a two Bundesliga leader. So I think he's got some tools, and some good finishing. I think he's a streaky guy, and it remains to be seen whether he's going to translate that over to the national team level. But there's definitely something there to work with, and I can understand why some people want to get a look at him. And he reminds me of a little bit of a guy like Will Bruin. Physical, can finish very well. Is always going to consistently bag his 10, 12 goals. So it's just a question of getting him in a good situation. He's laying on a very, very small 2 Bundesliga team, Sandhausen. So even in Germany, it's tough to watch him.
Yeah, of course, and hopefully that maybe his good performances in the second Bundesliga could help him get into a better team in, say, the first Bundesliga in the future. And just my last question, a bit of a two-parter question. Obviously, Brad Guzan will be the starting goalkeeper for the United States national team for a couple of months due to Jurgen Klinsmann's comments. Where does that leave Tim Howard now? Do you firmly believe that maybe if Howard does not get enough playing time as the starting goalkeeper, that he might consider international retirement? And what do you think has to be done for Howard to get back his starting role?
Well, he's going to have to do more with less. He's going to get limited opportunities, and then he has to, when he comes in, he has to prove himself again. I mean, everyone knows what he can do when he's on his game, and he's having a really good season. But I think what this move is going to do is it's going to bring out the best in both goalkeepers. I mean, for a while it was Tim Howard, and then Brad Guzan was a distant second. And for the past year, it was Brad Guzan, and then Nick Raimondo was a distant second. So everyone's kind of just had a free reign for a while, both these keepers, but now it's changed, and maybe the competition that exists now is going to bring out the best in both, Guzan and Howard. I mean, Guzan had some shaky moments at the Gold Cup, but then when you saw those saves he made against Peru, I think it was the 63rd minute, those back saves, they were absolutely they're mind-bogglingly good. I mean, they're phenomenal. So it's Guzan just can't slip up, and Howard, when he gets a chance, is going to have to pull off the extraordinary. It's going to be very interesting to see whether or not forces an international retirement. I mean, that's going to happen before, not too distant future. I mean, he's 36 years old, I believe, and
yes.
I have my guess, and this is completely guesswork on my part. I have no inside information, but it wouldn't surprise me if Howard is the overage goalkeeper for the Olympics, and then maybe after that, he starts to think about his future a little bit more about where it's going. But the Olympics is one tournament that he was Brad Friedel was an overage goalkeeper, and to go move ahead of Howard, and so Howard was a backup at the 2000 Olympics. So maybe it flips this time, and he gets a chance to go out like that. But I mean, that's just all complete and utter speculation on my part. But it's something that would be interesting. I mean, they've always used a goalkeeper, an overage spot in the Olympics for a goalkeeper, and why if you have Howard and Guzan? I mean, they seem to be logical, and Guzan's already done it, so Howard seems to be the logical choice.
Yeah, indeed. It'll definitely be an interesting fight for the starting spot in the future. Thank you, Brian. I'm going to pass it over to Joe now.
Thanks, Rob. Brian, I have one more quick question for you regarding that Peru-USA match that we saw the other night. And really, for me, it's a focus on the defensive pairing, mainly the defensive center backs. Jurgen Klinsmann had chosen to start the match with Omar Gonzalez and John Brooks, who, in my opinion, didn't have a horrible game, but obviously Omar is credited with the quote-unquote blunder that led to the goal in the match by Daniel Chavez. He then at halftime switched them out and went to Jeff Cameron and Matt Beasler for the second half. For the most part, Beasler getting in halfway through the second half. and in my opinion played great. And I've always been arguing. I've been arguing recently, especially with the performance in the Gold Cup, that Matt Besler should be starting for this U.S. men's national team at center back no matter what. And I was also impressed a great deal with Jeff Cameron. Do you see, coming up to this match in October with Mexico, do you see Jurgen going with the Jeff Cameron-Matt Besler pairing, or do you think you see some combination of Brooks, Omar Gonzalez, or even Ventura Alvarado? Do you possibly see one of those three guys getting in instead?
I mean, I think the Brazil game is going to factor into the equation. Based on what it is right now, Clemson likes Ventura Alvarado a lot more than I think most fans and journalists and other pundits, do. I think, he's been kind of fast-tracked into the national team more so than, guys who were there in January camp like Steve Birnbaum and Matt Hedges, guys who I see a lot every week, and particularly Hedges, who I'm impressed with. But, Mexico, it looks like, Jurgen's tipping his hand right now in the fact that he's going to roll with experience. And perhaps, quantities he's been familiar with for quite some time. So, a lot of it has to do with the health of the fullbacks. Maybe Jeff Cameron, who's playing a lot of right back, moves back into the middle if Fabian Johnson is healthy at that point. Maybe Tim Ream stays out left back, who I thought was a revelation. I mean, imagine Tim Ream cementing the left back status, and that opens up the door for Fabian Johnson to move elsewhere, perhaps in the midfield where he's more comfortable.
Sure.
So, my guess, I think you'd see a Cameron Brooks pairing. You get experience there. Both guys playing a high level week in, week out. A couple guys who've played in the World Cup before and been with this team now a couple of years, several years. So, Omar didn't have a good half. There was a couple different instances I can put to that. Besler, limited opportunities, did very well. So his name is also in the mix. So maybe you go with Besler Gonzalez or Besler Cameron. That wouldn't surprise me. Because I don't think you'll see a Besler Brooks combo because they're both left-footed, and I think he's going to want to keep a left-footed guy at left center back and a right-footed guy. So it'll be either Brooks or Besler, and it'll be either Cameron or Alvarado or Gonzalez on the right side. And it'd be a remarkable showing of faith if he goes with Alvarado in a game like against Mexico, just because of his experience. And it doesn't mean he doesn't believe in him, but for him to do that with the money on the line, particularly with Brooks, who's also very young, and it hurt that he's used to being played with a more experienced, more vocal, more of a center back partner who's also more inclined to that leadership role, whereas that responsibility falls on Brooks when he partners with Alvarado, and that's why I think that pairing hasn't really shown its potential over in races as we've seen if it ever will. So my guess is it's just going to be a combination of Brooks, Besler on the left, or Gonzalez, Cameron, and I'll go with Brooks and Cameron. I think they kind of fall in line with what Clemson's direction he's heading in, but we'll see.
Right. I feel like he's almost underrated at this point by Jurgen Klinsmann, meaning Matt Besler. And I thought that he kind of showed his quality in that match. So hopefully he'll be able to make the pitch for them in that Mexico match.
It was a very interesting comment Klinsmann said today at the press conference. He said, Besler's not going to feature against Brazil because the Sporting Kansas City wants him back. But Jurgen Klinsmann said something that I thought was kind of telling. He said something along the lines of, we've seen what we needed to see from that. And obviously, if he put on a good performance there, and seeing what he's seen, and using that to make a judgment on it, it can only mean good things.
Okay. Brian, I want to thank you again for taking the time out tonight to join us for our 2-year anniversary. We really appreciate it and enjoyed having you on in the past, and hopefully we'll have you back again very, very soon.
Anytime, guys. Thank you very much.
And going from Brian Sciaretta to arguably our favorite guest ever, Jeremy St. Louis from Bein Sport. Jeremy, how are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good, good. Glad you could make it to join us on our 2-year anniversary. You, by the way, are the only person that was on our 1-year anniversary and now our 2-year anniversary guest. So you're going to have to keep Labor Day free every year for us if you...
Well, I appreciate the fact that I get to be a part of it. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. I'm going to start you off with a quick question here. There was a tweet that you put out a few days ago that the EPL spent $1.3 billion in the transfer window, more than the Serie A and La Liga combined. My question to you is: Are the EPL teams any closer to winning this, or get any closer to winning the Champions League?
You know what? I don't think they are. I still think with all that money spent, I don't think that they can match Barcelona or Real Madrid or perhaps even PSG. I think PSG have done a good job in the window, and I think they might surprise. I think PSG have to really, based on where their project is at. I would think that now, if they don't get to the Champions League final, at least to the Champions League final, I think that there's going to be perhaps a major overhaul of that squad. Of course, we're hearing today that they put in a huge bid for Cristiano Ronaldo just as the window closed, and Real Madrid said no. So, I mean, PSG, they've got the money to buy the players that they want, but I think they've got the same problem as the EPL. They're buying a lot of the big players, but not necessarily buying the players that are going to win them a championship. And I think that that's something that, Barcelona and to an extent, a lesser extent, obviously, Real Madrid certainly have them beat in that regard. I think the Premier League I don't know if it's burning a hole in their pockets or what the deal is, but I mean, the spending power of the Premier League, it's going to keep going and going. And I also was saying, we haven't reached a tipping point yet. I don't know when we're going to reach a tipping point with, broadcast companies willing to pay all this money to have the Premier League for, the next 5-6 years.
Right. I'm going to throw you over to our second favorite Canadian, as you're our first, Mike Moore. I'm going to send you over to the great Sir Bob, Mike, and I know he has questions for you. So, Mike, go ahead.
Hey, Jeremy, how you doing tonight?
Good. How are you?
I'm doing well, but I had to promise to ask you no curling questions tonight. So I guess it's not appreciated outside of Canada.
Really?
Yeah, I guess
people love it down here.
I would say that's a half truth. I like watching curling myself. So,
all right. Well, I guess maybe our listeners didn't want to hear it tonight, but I'm going to ask you the same question I asked to our previous guest, Jonathan Johnson, and I asked him because he's our French football expert, and I'm going to ask you because I know you're a Manchester United fan. But you recently signed 19-year-old Anthony Martial from Monaco. I'm just wanted to ask you if you think this is a good move for him, and do you think Louis van Gaal is the right man to develop him?
Oh, geez! I wish I would have known what JJ said. He's our French football insider as well. I think you know what? I think we asked him this question a couple weeks ago, but I don't know if I was around at the time. For me, as a United fan, you know what? I'm kind of like Sir Alex Ferguson on this one. I really think that paying over $50 million for an unproven teenager is just ludicrous. I really think that it's mad times in football. I'm sure that Martial has the talent, but does he have that much talent that is on display already to afford that kind of money? It makes you wonder what, if he does pan out, what his next transfer is going to be, because this kid, at the rate that he is now, and the pressure that is on him at such a young age, having come in for that amount of money, I can't imagine the pressure that's going to be on that young guy. And I hope he's got the mental fortitude and the physical stones to handle it, because United fans are very unforgiving. In terms of Van Gaal leading United, you know what? I think that he could be the right man. The question is, he's got to figure out what he's doing with this team. You see Angel Di Maria, a player that should really excel, but can't find a place in the squad. He gets rid of Robin van Persie, which, I mean, to an extent, I can understand that, given that Van Persie's not getting any younger. But a lot of United fans are questioning what exactly is his plan for this team. I'm assuming he has one. It seems like he does, because he's certainly spending like he does. But is this team really in a better position than it was under David Moyes? I'm not so sure.
Why do you think they went out and spent so much money on Martial? Was it just like a public perception thing, or why do you think so?
I think I don't want to say that it was a panic buy, but I mean, it came to me as kind of like that. Like it's kind of like the window's closing. It's the last day, and we got to do something here. We've lost out on all the transfers that we wanted. De Gea, we are trying to get rid of him, but we're not going to get Ramos in return. We've lost out on Otamendi. All the transfers that we wanted really haven't panned out. We got to do something. And I mean, I think when they got rid of Van Persie, I mean, they were late for scoring. Getting Memphis is great, but I mean, he's not a traditional front man. He's going to be more of a wing player, which I mean, I completely understand. So you've got to we did need an attacking player, and so bringing in a guy like Martial, I don't necessarily think it was the best option, but it might be the only option that was available. It's something that can give them, to make a splash. He is a talented young player. Don't get me wrong. He's a very talented young player, but I'm just not sure that he's over $50 million US talented at 19 years of age.
And I think that's a fee that can even grow depending on performance.
Yeah. I
think I read it could be all the way up to 70. Like 8. Yeah, even 80, I think I read somewhere. But so 70 or 80, yeah, that's quite a bit of money. Before I give you over to Joe, Jeremy, I'd just like to thank you for being a great friend of the show, for coming on so many times, and all the best to you.
Oh, well, thank you very much. You know what? It's my pleasure. I don't get asked to do a lot of stuff, and I think I can count on one hand how many interviews I've probably given. But you guys are one of my favorites. I'm more than happy to support you. I'm really pleased to see you guys grow, and it's my pleasure to be able to come on to your podcast and chat football with you guys. It's a great pleasure for me, so I really appreciate it.
Thanks a lot, Jeremy. And I guess it's Rob I'm going to give you over to now.
Yeah, I just want to mention, Jeremy, thank you so much for coming on for the last couple of months. You really have put our name on the American TV, and it's not just you that's giving the publicity, but it's everyone at beIN Sport, Andres, Kay, Mateo, Phil, Ray, everyone. So
we're happy to do it.
Yeah, absolutely. I just want to go and talk about your beloved Canada. Obviously, they had a 3-0 lead over Belize in their first World Cup qualifier match in Belize and Toronto a couple of days ago, and we'll be playing the second leg tomorrow night in Belize. Obviously, given the fact that they probably will qualify for the next round, do you think that they have the capability of possibly providing a surprise with the group with Mexico and Honduras?
No, you know what? I've lost after seeing how Canada played at the Gold Cup. I've lost some hope in terms of what I'm seeing from this team. Benito Flores, when I spoke to him, he told me that his goal, and he said it publicly too, is to get this team to 2018. And I really don't think that that's going to happen. As a matter of fact, I'd be surprised if they're even competing within that group for a spot to get into the Hex. And I mean, CONCACAF, that's a tough slog. I mean, you've got 3 qualifying rounds, plus then you got the group stage, then you go to the Hex, and then you go to the World Cup potentially with a playoff. I mean, I'm based on what I saw at the Gold Cup, they didn't score a goal, and Belize, okay, it's great. They got the 3 goals. St. Ricketts and Asiba Harris get goals, and that's great for Canada, great for the home crowd in Toronto. They get to see them score some goals, but from what I saw at the Gold Cup and from what I've seen of this team, beating Belize 3-0, great result. Mexico, Honduras, not a chance. And remember, Honduras were the ones that hammered them in the last time they went to World Qualifying. Canada looked like, I think all they needed was a draw. They got hammered 8-1, and it was a disgrace, and it was embarrassing for Canadian soccer fans. I haven't seen anything from this Canadian team yet that says that they are going to go to the World Cup in 2018. And if by some miracle they happen to make it to Russia, it's going to be 1986 all over again. No goals, no points, out after the group stage. Thanks for coming to Russia.
Well, then, I guess in this sense, and I obviously don't want that to happen, but I guess the mindset is now to think about Qatar in 2022.
Yeah, and you know what? Canada has a great soccer following. They've got a good soccer community. The program in Canada, in terms of the participation, it's the biggest participation sport in Canada is soccer, for boys and girls. You have to think that in a country of 35 million people, at some point we're going to be able to find 11 boys, and we've got 11 pretty good girls right now, but we'll find 11 guys that can put together a run to a World Cup and not just get there, but get there on a regular basis and get there and be able to compete. I don't know if I'm going to see that in my lifetime. I'm hopeful. I also said that the Winnipeg Jets would not come back in my lifetime, and I've been proven wrong there. So hope springs eternal for my red and white getting to the World Cup.
Absolutely. And going back to your 11 guys that could do well in the World Cup, we're looking for our 11 guys to actually win a World Cup.
Yeah, and you know what? This is U.S. soccer, I'm really interested to see what Jurgen Klinsmann does when the playoff comes against Mexico. The game against Brazil tomorrow night is going to be a good game, but it's a friendly. I know the Americans aren't going to treat it as a friendly. They're treating it as, their last tune-up before they play Mexico for that Confederation Cup playoff. But that game against Mexico, yes, it's a playoff game. Yes, there's a lot on the line, but I also think that there's a little bit of a chip on the shoulder, too, because there's been a lot of doubt cast about Klinsmann, as usual, after what happened at the Gold Cup. A lot of doubt cast about what he's doing with the defense. What is he doing with his attack? What does he know what his starting 11 is? And that's been the question with Klinsmann the whole time that he's been there. I think that with Mexico, not only do they have to beat Mexico, I think they have to beat Mexico emphatically and put a stamp on being the top team in CONCACAF, especially after what happened at the Gold Cup.
So a 2-0?
Well, I would hope that they would at some point be 2-0, but we'll see.
We'll see. And just my last question. I just want your opinions on two great young, promising talents for Canada, Kyle Larin of Orlando City and Tayshaun Kandeli of FC Dallas.
Well, I haven't seen FC Dallas play much, so I really can't comment there. But Kyle Larin, I've seen him play, and what a great young talent he is. I think that there's a lot of promise there. Really disappointing at the Gold Cup, though. I really would have thought with the pressure on a bit that he would have been able to step up and kind of lead Canada. So that was a little bit disappointing. But young players, new situation. You when you lose, don't lose the lesson. That's what I was always told, and that's sort of what I believe. And it's my hope that even though he may have lost and didn't necessarily come out after a great Gold Cup, I think that he will learn from that and be able to move forward with that. And I think that he is certainly one of the bright young talents for Canada moving forward.
Yeah, and you look at everything he's been breaking so far in this season. I think he's like one of the few Canadians to ever score a hat-trick, and he's only 20 years old. And he's doing it in his debut season, so it's impressive. Jeremy, I really want to thank you for coming on the show, and we hope to have you on very, very soon. And I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thanks, Rob. Jeremy, I just have one more question for you before we let you go. This one comes from our chat, and we've kind of notified our chat tonight that we're not going to be able to get most of the questions in because of the time schedule, but this one is one that we do actually have a minute for. It comes from our guest from last week, Ada Dizdar, who covers Turkish football. And recently, BN Media bought out Digiturk and the rights to the Turkish league. The question they're posing to you is, could we potentially see the Istanbul derbies on BN Sport anytime soon, or even Turkish football added to the program mix?
I certainly wouldn't rule it out, but again, that's. I wish I could provide a clear answer on that. Unfortunately, for us here, programming is certainly not something that I'm in on. It's not a conversation that I'm a part of. I certainly will make recommendations, and we know that acquisition has taken place, and it's our hope that we do get to diversify the portfolio in a new way. As certainly viewers will tell you, we have so much football already. We can't even squeeze it onto the channels that we have because we've got 3 major leagues in Europe. And, we do have some spotty Russian Premier League, and we pick up games here and there, friendlies and whatnot. It's our hope that at some point, my hope anyways, at some point that we would certainly be able to see that. I know that there is a decent fan base for Turkish football in North America. And as I said, I can't predict the future. I can't say for sure whether or not we'll ever see it, but it's my hope that certainly at some point we will.
Okay. My last thing that I need to bring up with you is when you were on the last time, we had told you that you weren't actually following the soccer podcast, and you became our 300th follower, if you remember correctly. Remember that? Coming up, I'm just being told right now that you actually don't follow Sir Bob.
Really?
Yeah, that's what he says.
All right. Well, I will change that. I will change that immediately.
Awesome.
I'm going to be running down to makeup right away for tonight's edition of the Extra. So I will make sure that while I'm sitting in the chair getting worked on, that I correct that.
Thanks, Jeremy.
Go for it. And obviously, as soon as we get out of here, we'll be watching you. So thanks again for joining us on our 2-year anniversary. We always enjoy having you on, and love to have you back anytime soon.
Anytime, guys. Thanks very much, and happy anniversary.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
And that is the great Jeremy St. Louis. I got to tell you, man, love talking to him all the time. I can't wait. I do have 10 seconds here, I think, before we're going to have our next guest on. My wife and I were looking at cruises next year, and we found a cruise that would take us to Miami. And actually, I told my wife that would be great. We should book it because I'm going to book an extra couple days off, and I'm going to visit Jeremy and the folks at Bein Sports. So
you can get a drink.
Exactly. I'm sure one of them would be. Hopefully, one of them might meet up with us. So that would be fantastic. I mean,
smoke Cuban cigars with Andres Cordero.
Absolutely. Honestly, if I could, I would actually like to play soccer with Andres Cordero. That's what I would like to do. If I do get a chance to meet Andres Cordero anywhere here in the near future, I'd actually like to play soccer with him. We'd go smoke cigars after, but certainly
he's half your age.
No, listen.
Is he half your age?
No,
somewhere in around there.
I don't know how old he is, but honestly, I'm sure he would absolutely run circles around me. So I'm going to actually message Jon Arnold now because Jon is our next guest in the shoot, and I can't wait to talk to him. I have some great questions for him as well. So I'm going to just see if he's up. So, guys, while we have 5 seconds here, anything that you guys want to add so far to the 6 guests that we've had so far?
It's been great. And I want to thank everyone who's listening here tonight for the last hour and 45 minutes. We still have a few more guests, and I hope that you can all tune in and hope that you enjoy the show.
Amen. Mike, how about you?
Just to echo what Rob said, and just to let everyone know, we'll be going back to our 90-minute format next week. So
that's right.
We're long tonight for the anniversary and our big guest list.
Yep. But joining us right now on Low Limit Football is Jon Arnold. Jon, how are you tonight?
Hey, great, guys. How you doing?
Great. Thank you for joining us on our 2-year anniversary show. We really appreciate you coming back on with us. My quick question is on the Mexico-U.S. match coming up on October 10th. Obviously, both teams have a couple of friendlies. We saw Mexico go down 2-1 to Trinidad and Tobago just the other night to come back and tie the match 3-3. And we saw the U.S. team, play a decent match against a solid Peru side that finished third in the Copa America. What are your expectations coming out of this match in October?
It's funny because you would expect that Mexico would have had the momentum after winning the Gold Cup, but I think that all pretty much dissipated when Miguel Herrera decided to take his disagreement with the Mexican commentator to a physical level, and the FMF decided that was unacceptable and fired him. And then you've had this sort of soul-searching process for the Mexican Federation, and they haven't really been able to find any coach that they have faith in that actually wants to coach the team. So you have Tuca Ferretti as the interim. His first match was Friday night against Trinidad and Tobago. It's a friendly against a team that gave them trouble during the Gold Cup. It's a friendly against a team that I think is on the rise in CONCACAF, that I think, maybe along with Jamaica, who struggled as well, could be kind of a kind of resurgence in the Caribbean. But for me, I still think that it's a failure for him to not be able to get a victory. It's not going to get any easier. Tomorrow night, I'm here in Texas. He's got a friendly match against Argentina, which beat Bolivia 7-0 their last time out. But he does get some players back. I guess I just think that, like I said, you would have expected the momentum to stay with 0-3, but after the Herrera firing and now with these friendlies, I'm not so sure that they're going to be looking too hot coming in October. So I think if you just want to look at, how's the momentum going, I think it probably favors the U.S.
Yeah. Would you care to fancy a prediction for that match? I mean, I know it's early. They both have friendlies coming up before that against very tough opponents. But as it stands today, what would you predict as a final score?
Well, I think it's a massive match, and I think that both teams are going to be ready for that. I think sometimes that can either lead to really cautious play, or that can lead to absolutely wild, 5-3 scoreline or something like that. I think the U.S. will nick it. I think Mexico has the talent to get in. I'm fascinated to see if Freddie brings in Giovanni Dos Santos, if he brings in Jonathan Dos Santos, and who his goalkeeper is in that match.
But all those are huge questions for me, where the U.S. has some questions, of course, as I'm sure you guys have discussed and will discuss, but I don't think they have anywhere near the questions, and I think the familiarity with Jurgen Klinsmann, his game plan, and the players knowing what's kind of expected of them, I think will help the U.S. I'll say 2-1 right now, but like you mentioned, there's plenty of time for me to wiggle out of that one if I need to, right?
That's absolutely right up to kickoff. There's time to wiggle out of it for sure. So I'm going to send you over. I'm going to send you over to Rob Rojas. I know Rob has some questions for you. Rob, take it away.
Hey, John, it's nice to have you on the show again.
Well, thanks, guys. Happy anniversary as well.
Thank you so much. I want to mention the transfer of Chicharito Hernandez to Bayer Leverkusen. Just your overall opinion on that, basically.
Yeah, I think that it's a great move. I wrote at Goal.com that I just think that Chicharito is a player who we've seen his talent. You know, we saw him in his first season even with Manchester United. When he gets on the pitch, he can make things happen. He's one of those strikers who gets in the right place at the right time. He scores some pretty goals, but you're not going to see him in the best goal compilation of 2015 and that kind of thing. But with that said, he pops up in the right places. He knows how to use space. But when your competition is Cristiano Ronaldo, Karim Benzema, Real Madrid, when your competition is Wayne Rooney and Manchester United, and you have a manager who doesn't seem that fond of you, I just think it might be time, and I think he's wisely done this. I think it was overdue to go to a team that I said maybe isn't a 5-star on FIFA, maybe he's a 4.5. You know, it's not that he's not one of the better players in the region. It's not that he can't maybe match the caliber of some of those players, but he's just not getting opportunities. And I think at Bayern he'll find a place where not only is he able to showcase his skills, but it'll be needed. It's a team that is going to need Chicharito. That's going to rely on him to score goals. They lost a couple of their top goal scorers from last year. One was transferred to Tottenham. One of them, I think, is on the way out as well. So, yeah, Song was to Tottenham. And then, so, I think there's space for him in that team. I think that it's a team that's going to be relying on him. And I think that's exactly what he needs. He needs to get that match play because with a player like him, the rhythm is so important, understanding where teammates like to shoot, understanding where they are going to put those crosses in. And I don't know how much of that he was able to establish in his previous stops. So I think it's a great move for him and overall for the Mexican national team.
He's surely going to have a tough test in his group in the Champions League, having to face Roma and Barcelona in that group. I'm going to go switch to CONCACAF again. Obviously, we had the World Cup, the first leg of the World Cup qualifiers a couple of days ago, and some interesting score lines, especially this one where Nicaragua won 3-2 against Jamaica at home in Kingston. Do you think Nicaragua can hold the score line to knock out the Gold Cup finalists?
It's funny, Nicaragua is a country that's so dominated by baseball. I spoke with the coach of Walter Ferretti. He was at a press conference. I didn't chat with him personally, but he was talking about how much of a baseball country Nicaragua is and how tough it can be sometimes to kind of break through the love that the country has for that sport. And with that said, I saw a headline today that said that tickets are already one of the hottest, commodities in Nicaragua right now, that the stadium is going to be full, that the atmosphere is going to be really good. So I think Nicaragua has some talented players. That Walter Ferretti core that makes up the defense that they have is very solid. So I think that they definitely have a chance. Jamaica, I wouldn't say they're going to be, worried or fearful necessarily of the atmosphere. They've been in tough situations before, obviously playing in the Gold Cup, make it all the way to the final. But I just wonder if maybe there's a little bit of a hangover and maybe a little bit of overconfidence there on that team and maybe Jennifer Winfred Schaefer's part as well. I'm not saying the team wasn't prepared for that match, but I don't think anyone was ready for how quickly Nicaragua kind of jumped down their throat and was able to kind of control that match for, first half or so. So Jamaica came back. I think that they'll be ready, but I think it's possible that it could hold, and if it does, what an upset. It's a nation that in Jamaica, you look, they were the worst team in the Hex last time around. That wasn't acceptable for them. They switched managers. They had a new long-term project. If they don't even make it to the next round of qualifying, it's a real step back after, making the Gold Cup final for the first time, thinking, oh, it's a big moment for progress. That progress could be immediately undone. So I think it could hold. It's definitely one to watch here in tomorrow. Yeah,
absolutely. And I'm just sticking to, and just my last question. I'm going to talk about the fourth round that Mexico have in their group. They have Honduras, the winner of Canada, Belize. Let's just say Canada advance, and the winner of Group 2, which possibly would be El Salvador. Yep. Is that a dream group for Mexico?
I don't think it's a dream group, but it's definitely better than the other one. Although Nicaragua coming out could make things easier. In the second group, I think they're with Costa Rica if they go through. if I'm not mistaken. So I don't know if it's a dream group. I think the trip to Honduras is tough, although they're in a difficult place right now. El Salvador is a weird one because they looked really good against Curaçao. I thought they might struggle because they had a new manager and everything, but it looks like they might be on the way to the next round. But look, I think qualification is set up to benefit these teams. The Mexicos, the U.S., the Costa Rica, and I think they've kind of earned that right. And I think you're going to see that manifest itself on the pitch. Especially because in the case of Mexico, right now they're in a very transitionary period. I think that the playoff in October that we talked about is going to be difficult. I think maybe the first match or the first two matches of qualification will be difficult. But in 2016, they should, ideally for Mexico, be in some sort of rhythm, ready to kind of be back. You should have players playing in Europe. You should have, a manager with an identity, with a style. So I definitely think that Mexico should be able to get through a group if it does look like that with El Salvador and Canada. Canada, I'm a little, it's a team that you think is going to make more progress than maybe they actually do because all the signs are there, the development is there. Benito Floro looks like a great manager, and then they struggle in the Gold Cup. I think he'll come out of that, but I'm not sure if a repeat trip to Honduras, a trip to the Azteca, and a trip down to San Salvador will be very kind to my friends from the north. So I think Mexico would get out of that group. So yeah, I guess a pretty good one. I don't know if it's a dream draw, but I don't know if that exists in CONCACAF anymore, right? Like there's no super easy cakewalks, and I think that's a great thing for soccer and in the region. I think it speaks to the game's growth, not just in like MLS in the U.S., but all over the Americas.
It shows that not only the United States and Mexico have the capability to be dominating in their region.
Well, definitely, and I think you see that in all aspects of CONCACAF because, you look at the CONCACAF Champions League, we talked a couple, like the last time I was on the show, we talked about some of these CONCACAF Champions League teams who could be upset-minded, and, it's not just MLS teams that are looking to beat Mexico off that throne, it's not just DC United or Seattle Sounders that are saying, we gotta really get this together. It's not only MLS that's saying we gotta dedicate league resources to beating Mexico. Costa Rican teams are doing that, and these teams in the Caribbean and in Central America are dreaming of that as well, even if it's a much more daunting task. And some of them are getting close, and some of them are going to do it. Some of them are right there. So I think in all aspects of CONCACAF, we're seeing it's not just going to be U.S.-Mexico dominated anymore. I think they'll still be the powers for quite some time to come, with Costa Rica in there as well. But I think you're going to start seeing some of these nations continue to pull surprises and continue to kind of make things interesting. There's no chalk really anymore. I think it's always going to be games that merit watching, that merit keeping an eye on some of these teams that are entering as underdogs, but perhaps come out with the victories and that kind of thing. So I think it's great for fans, right? I mean, even if you want the U.S. to dominate or you want Mexico to dominate or whoever you root for, it's still fun to see these teams that are good and not watch a game that's 8-1 in qualification or whatever the scoreline is. You want soccer to be competitive in your region, and you want it to go, and I think that's happening.
Absolutely. And let's just hope the next Canadian that you're about to speak to is actually going to be happy that Canada are moving forward. It's Mike. So thank you, John.
Yeah, pleasure.
Mike, you're up.
Oh, I think Mike's got his mic.
Hi, sorry, John. It's Mike in Toronto. Thanks for joining us tonight. I'm just happy when Canada can score one goal, so my expectations aren't too high. My question for you tonight, though, is about Giovanni Dos Santos. He recently joined the LA Galaxy, and while he has had a great start for them, I'm just wondering how this move is perceived by Mexico, especially the national team. And do you think we could see more high-profile Mexican players making the move in the future?
Yeah, Giovanni's an interesting case because he's a player who supported Miguel Herrera openly after right when his firing was kind of being debated and in the immediate aftermath as well. But he's not on this roster for Mexico right now. His brother isn't. His brother also supported Herrera. And Ochoa, the goalkeeper, who was kind of Miguel Herrera's guy, isn't on this roster either. So those three players aren't on it. The Mexican Federation insists that it's not a suspension. It's not any sort of punishment. It's just Tuca's decision. I think a lot of people, myself included, have had trouble taking that at face value. I think that you'll see him in the national team picture sooner rather than later, especially if a manager comes in from the outside, because quite frankly, he's one of the best Mexican forwards going right now, no matter what team he's on. When we look at the Galaxy, I think the Galaxy are a different case from maybe some other MLS teams. With all respect to them, when you look at the roster they have, at the international presence that they have with some of the stars that are known in Mexico, as well as, around the globe, I think people look at the Galaxy and say, this is a team that's just as good as many Mexican teams. They kind of need to back it up in CONCACAF Champions League, but I think they're respected in Mexico enough to where fans are saying, you know what, Giovanni, if he's playing well there, which he is, and it's covered very, very intensely. All the Galaxy matches have been front page news in the Mexican websites and press since his move there. If he's playing well there, then he should be on the team. There's no reason not to. I think they still kind of deride the move at the prime of his career because I think most fans believe, probably rightly, that he could still be playing for a top team there. But I think, like you said, I think he could be the pace setter, trend setter. I think that especially if Mexican players continue to, be able to command the money that they do as marketing machines, a guy like Chicharito could come over. It's been long rumored that he would make an MLS move for ridiculous money. That hasn't come through yet. But I think a player like Chicharito could come through. And I think Liga MX is going to be competing for some of these kind of Mexican internationals coming back. Javier Aquino just moved back to Tigres, but, you could have just as well, I think, seen him make an MLS move. So I think there could be some, especially the big-name guys who can kind of be successful on the pitch and also on billboards and that kind of thing.
Yeah, I really hope it happens. It would just make the MLS so much better to watch with the Mexican players in it for sure. I want to thank you tonight for joining us on our second anniversary. It was a real pleasure talking to you, and I'll give you back to Joe. Thanks a lot, John.
Thanks, Mike. And again, I want to repeat what Mike just said, John. Thank you again for coming on the show tonight and joining us for our 2-year anniversary. We always enjoy having you on and love to have you back again soon.
Well, yeah, my pleasure, guys. Hope to talk to you soon. Congrats. I know how hard it can be to kind of keep grinding and put a good show together where you guys do it. And we'll talk soon.
Thanks again. Have a good night.
Cheers.
And that was Jon Arnold. Fantastic. Another great guest that we always enjoy talking to. I'm going to reach out to our next guest right now. If you guys will bear with me 1 second so I can get his number up and ready to go here. But obviously things are going pretty darn quick for me trying to manage all the guests tonight. And, but I'm having a great time. It's so great to be able to talk to all these different guests, and they keep reiterating how much they enjoy talking to us. It's a lot of fun. So without further ado, let me see if I can get our second to last guest for the evening up on the phone here. Hopefully he's ready to go.
Hello, this is Juan.
Juan, it's Joe Usello from Low Limit Football. How are you tonight?
Doing good, man. How's it going?
Good. Glad you can join us for our 2-year anniversary show. We always appreciate talking to you. Mm-hmm. And you were actually you were the subject of our. We had an opening thoughts about our favorite moment or a moment from the past year, and I went back to the discussion we had between you, Mike, and Sulaiman Folarin about reforming FIFA. Remember that?
Yeah.
That was my choice of the night. So my first question to you, real quick, is a tweet that you had earlier today about what Dunga or talked about in preparation for tomorrow night's match against the U.S. men's national team. He said his debate was to whether put on an experimental side or to put on a side that will go on and win the game. So my question to you is, what would that experimental side entail?
Well, first of all, I mean, if you start looking at the middle term, you start looking at the fact that you don't have Neymar playing the first 2 matches of the World Cup qualifiers. You don't have that luxury in front of you. So you do have to have a starting 11, a cohesive group, already knowing what each one has to be able to do, what each one has to be able to, or has to be obligated to do in these particular situations. That being said, one of the things that Brazil has right now that's a major problem for them at the national team level is this Neymar dependency. Everything goes through Neymar. He recovers the ball. He dribbles the ball. He transports the ball. He distributes the ball. And he has to make the pass to be the goal, and he has to be at on the scoring end as well. So you have to have players in the mindset already saying, hey, we're not going to depend on Neymar. We're not going to depend on what he's able to offer. So we might as well just start getting our starting 11 ready for the matches that are coming up in the month of October. That's the big issue. Now, they know that they're also obligated to win in front of their fans. Brazil historically, they're damned if they do, they're damned if they don't. If they go tomorrow and win, but they don't show some type of substance or some type of improvement against compared to the match against Costa Rica, then people are going to criticize them. At the same time, if they go and play against the U.S. and the U.S. ends up winning, well, then they're going to get criticized because they lost to the U.S. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, it's one of those situations that a team like Brazil, although to me, it's probably the worst generation that Brazil's ever had from a football standpoint. You know, they're in a very, they're in a catch-22 for all intents and purposes.
I agree. On the flip side of that, let's look at Jurgen Klinsmann's side of it. He's got the big match against Mexico coming up on the 10th of October. What does he put out on the pitch tomorrow night?
I mean, again, it's the same thing. I mean, as far as Jurgen Klinsmann is concerned, I remember I was talking, exchanging some tweets today also with Taylor Tallman, and that was one of the things that I mentioned. Like, at one point, Jurgen Klinsmann has to stop tweaking. He has to stop making changes, having players play out of position, having players in roles that they're not accustomed to or they don't function best in. Mm-hmm. And that has to start right now. And you have to start getting the team, the squad with a mentality, with the focus placed on that match against Mexico because of that. Mexico are having their own issues as well, but the U.S. have to worry about what they have to offer now. You have three players coming in, one of them being Michael Bradley. How is he going to function? You have to get all these players into the same mental zone. And I think that's one of the things that Klinsmann has to start focusing on as of right now. The tweaking has to stop. The experimentation per se has to stop. And try and finalize. And the same thing with Dunga. He has to try and get something done and be able to make it happen as quick as possible, because you don't have you might have a little bit more flexibility in Brazil's case, but in the U.S. you only get one shot, one match. That's pretty much it.
Right, exactly. I'm going to send you over to Mike Orr. I know Mike has some questions, and I promise you he's a little more subdued than the last time we spoke. So, Mike, go ahead and take it away.
Hi, Juan. How you doing?
What's up, man? How you doing?
I'm not as passionate tonight. I'll promise you that.
Well, there's no games going on. Well, I want to see you tomorrow night, though.
All right. I guess I just asked our previous guest the same question I'm about to ask you, and the reason why is because we have a lot of Mexican fans and LA Galaxy fans. So I wanted to ask you about Giovanni Dos Santos, and he's had a great start for the Galaxy, and I'm just wondering how this move is perceived in Mexico, especially by the national team. I know he's been left off this squad. They said it wasn't for, kind of backing the last coach, but what does it mean for him to the national team now that he's in MLS? And do you think we could see some higher profile Mexicans making this move in the future?
You know what? It's kind of a divided impression that I'm getting. Many are looking at Gio Dos Santos as a player, who's still, in his mid to late 20s, looking to try and prove himself on the big stage. He is on the pitch outside of Memo Ochoa. He is the face of Mexican football for all intents and purposes. And many see it as a negative step. Why is he going to MLS? He should be playing in Europe. I mean, you still have those types of questions, because at the same time, as you see Gio Dos Santos head to MLS, you see Porto start bringing in, 5-6 Mexican players. You see Andres Guardado become an integral part of play in Europe as well. You start to see these players start to go more into leagues in Europe. You see Miguel Layún, as I mentioned before, with Porto. You start seeing those players want to go over there or want to stay over there. Meanwhile, you see Gio Dos Santos not do that. But at the same time, you look at Gio's career, and it's not that he's really torn it up, going back even to his days at Barcelona, at Spurs, etc. You don't see that he's really had this, amazing career there. So, I mean, it is kind of a good move for him. And obviously the salary that he's getting, he's not going to command that type of money in Europe in no way, shape, or form. So let's be realistic on that end. Some look at it as a positive because obviously he's closer to home. He's not going to have to travel through 6-7 time zones to get to the Mexican national team camps and play during World Cup qualifiers. in the CONCACAF region, play most of his matches in the U.S. as far as friendlies are concerned. So yeah, that's going to be fine there. But I think the jury's still out. I think it's a little bit too premature to start talking about how Gio's impact is going to have, the type of impact it's going to have. As far as the marketing standpoint, tremendous, because you know what? Most of the Mexican fans in LA and even throughout the United States, they're not going to have Steven Gerrard's jersey as much as people think that that's the case. That's not the case. The most marketable player on that LA Galaxy team here in the United States is Gio Dos Santos. So, I mean, as much as everybody wants to say, well, it's Gerrard, it's not. It's Gio Dos Santos. And I think from a strategic and from a marketing standpoint, it was a brilliant move for MLS to bring him over.
Jon Arnold, who I asked the same question to, pretty much said the same thing, although he thought maybe this move might open the pathway for a few other Mexican players to make the move to MLS. Do you agree with that?
It could. I mean, why not? Why not? I mean, but it also depends on which Mexican players do you bring in. I mean, if you look at Liga MX right now, there's a big crisis going on because you look at the national team. There's not a lot of depth. I mean, which Mexican player that's currently not playing in Europe would you look at bringing into MLS right now? Not a lot of very marketable names. Maybe Oribe Peralta, maybe Memo Ochoa if he wants to come back and get some action. Maybe. Rafa Marquez, we already saw that experiment. He's not coming back, and he's not having the best of times over at Hellas Verona either. I mean, really, are you going to bring in Gulli Peña? I mean, who are the players in the Mexican League that are going to be commanding the type of money that Gio Dos Santos is getting with the LA Galaxy? Not very many. Can it open it? Absolutely, it can, and it possibly would be the case. Now you start looking at which markets they're going to go to. Okay, outside of LA, maybe LAFC, New York, Miami. Not going to work in Miami. If Miami were to get the MLS team, maybe Orlando. I mean, but it can open the door, but you have to start seeing on a case-by-case situation who are the Mexican players that you're talking about and what impact they would have in the league overall.
Would Houston and FC Dallas be two of the teams that could draw the Mexican players?
Yes, but would they be willing to pay?
Right. No, I just meant because you were mentioning
that's why I didn't mention those two squads, because they're really not the type that are going to come in and I mean, because let's be honest, I mean, Liga MX, a lot of the Mexican players, historically, even present day, they decide to stay in Mexico because they get paid just as well as if they were going to go to Europe, but then they have the home cooking to really support them in their decision to remain in Mexico. And they're going to go to MLS and earn maybe a little bit more, maybe even a little bit less to come to MLS and play? I don't think so. So, I mean, again, it depends on the player that you're looking at. And if you look at the players that are really shining in Liga MX right now, they're mostly foreigners.
Right. Yeah, that makes sense. Before I let you go, Juan, I just wanted to thank you. You've been a great friend to the show, and thanks for being on again tonight. It was a real pleasure talking to you.
Yeah, man, no problem. And I'll make sure I send you, some beer or something like that, while you can have your 3-year anniversary and consume that, imbibe those beverages while you're doing the show. That's the challenge there. That's the challenge there. Doing it, drinking it while you're talking about football. That's a big challenge. Sober, man, that's easy.
I might be up for that challenge next year, though, John. Thanks a lot. Juan, sorry. Thanks a lot, Juan.
You see, I don't know what you're drinking right now, so there you go.
True enough. I'm just having water at the moment.
Oh yeah. That's what we call it down here, man. So,
Miller time's coming soon.
Fire water.
Yeah.
All right.
Anyway,
Rob.
So, definitely. No, I appreciate it. I mean, you guys have been major supporters, and I truly appreciate being on your show. And you supported. I mean, you guys mentioned being with Sly, and of course both of my boys Sly and George. Shout out to them if they're listening. You've been major supporters of us.
Yep.
Throughout our career. So it's and it's been great.
Thank you.
All right, I'm going to turn you over to Rob Rojas because I know Rob has a couple of questions real quick. So Rob, fire away.
Let's make this quick.
Oh, no, man. He always likes to ask me about my personal life.
Hey, man, you said you had stories. You said you had stories with George and everyone.
I got to tell you right now, man. Come on. I mean, I know you guys are on the internet, but I think that would get you thrown off the internet.
At least you were a good. At least you were a good replacement for the last in the last 24 hours, thankfully. Just my quick question. Paraguay have their first qualifiers in the remainder of the year. They have Venezuela, Argentina, Peru, and Bolivia. Do you think they can get how many points? How out of those four? What do you think would be an ideal situation?
You talking about Peru?
No, Paraguay.
But man, you know what? That's a great question. I have to see how healthy Paraguay are at this stage. I really enjoyed watching from a motivational standpoint, seeing Ramon Diaz do what he did in Copa America. That now, if you look at it from a whole perspective, you see what Paraguay were able to do, and it was just mostly balls. It was just mostly out of pride, out of, not wanting to get blown out, except obviously the match against Argentina. But I think that was a more realistic inclination as far as what Paraguay is capable of doing. If you shut down one of their options, they really don't have much depth. If you start looking at what they can do, they can cause problems. The big question is how many points they're going to get at home. Because last time around in World Cup qualifying play, they were really successful at Defensores del Chaco, and that's the place where they were able to accumulate a great majority of their points, and they let a lot of them slip by. But then you do have this stability in the coaching end with both Ramon Diaz and San Emiliano as his assistant. And I think that's going to be something that you start to see with this Paraguayans. Can they qualify? That's a bigger question that we'll have to see as far as this squad's concerned. It's a very veteran team. It's a squad that really isn't having a lot of turnover, a lot of new faces come in. Romero from Racing as well as Derlis Gonzalez are the two players that are the younger generation that are coming in, and really nobody else up top is coming in. You talk about the same names over and over again. Roque Santa Cruz, who's been injured since I think 2007, and Nelson Valdez, how's he going to be playing? How's he going to continue playing? So, a lot of question marks for Paraguay, but they can cause some problems.
Yeah, and as you've seen in the Copa Libertadores, Federico Santander has been spectacular. But as Tim Vickery said a couple of weeks ago, when I asked him the same question, there has to be a lot of change in the squad.
And Ramon Diaz has said the same thing. Santander has been a major contributor. And you've seen it at the club level, but then when you look at the way the clubs are playing in just Argentine football and in Brazilian football, Cruzeiro was back-to-back champions just a couple of years ago. Now this year they're fighting to stay in the first division in Brazil. So you see a lot of changes in different squads, and I think the ones that have remained, I guess you could say, for lack of a better term, somewhat stable have been the Paraguayan ones. That's why you see them advance so deep into these Copa Libertadores tournaments, but you don't see those players really translate into national side pieces of the puzzle, and I think that's been the biggest thing. You saw that generation from 2004 really have remained there. The only true mainstay, the only really true anchor in the middle of that midfield has been Nestor Ortigosa, and he played 2 matches in less than a span of 24 hours this past weekend. And that's the biggest and most telling thing about this Paraguayan side. That you have players with the character, but you don't have the depth to really carry you through a 2-year-long type of qualifying process.
Yeah, of course. But it's going to be interesting to see what they could do in the next few years. Juan, I really want to thank you for coming on the show. You've always been a good contributor, as always, and we'd love to have you on soon. I'm going to pass it over to Joe.
Thanks, Rob.
No problem, man. Thanks as always, man. Appreciate it, guys. Take care, and hopefully you have 2 more years and lots more after that.
Well, the next time you're up Bristol way, you're gonna have to meet up with me for that frosty cold beverage. Usually we'll do it December, January, right?
Yeah, but you won't need to put it in the fridge. You just pile up some snow and just stick it in there like they did in Foxborough. They still do that, yeah.
That's the only benefit of living up here is in the winter you get an extra refrigerator.
Yeah, of course. And you can, instead of drinking the beer, you just use it as a lollipop. It's all good.
There you go. All right, man. Thanks again. Have a good night.
All right, man. Take care. All right, peace.
And that was the great Juan Arango. Just reflecting back, and before I give Leander Schaerlaeckens a call here, we've had tons of guests on our shows over the past couple of years. But when you look back at the two of the last three, Jeremy and Juan, talk about helping us grow. Those guys really fit that mold or fit that description where they helped us grow and really brought us along. I always think back to what Juan said the first time we had him on, where he basically said, hey, let's relax, let's have some fun, and he was right there. So that's, to me, those are the guys that really have helped us grow over the years, and I'm grateful for them. So, without any further ado, I am going to effort Leander Schaerlaeckens here, and we'll see if we can get him on the show. And he is going to be the last guest, barring a surprise phone call from Ray Hudson. So,
hello.
Hi, Leander. This is Joe Usello from Low Limit Football. How are you tonight?
Good. How are you?
Good. Thank you for taking some time out to join us for our 2-year anniversary show. We really do appreciate you coming on. I want to actually open up the questions to you with a question about the New York Red Bull. Currently they are sitting in second place in the Eastern Conference in MLS. And really, when we look at them, statistically speaking, they do have a couple of games at hand on DC United, and at the moment are the best performing team in MLS with an average of 1.68 points per game. But they've disappointed folks in the past in terms of not being able to close out things. The best they've done is they've won the Supporters' Shield, once in their lifetimes. Is this a team that we feel can challenge for that MLS Cup title finally this year?
I think so, and I think what's fundamentally different about these Red Bulls from the Red Bulls of the past is that they're a team. And that sounds like a harsh thing to say, but just the way fundamentally that franchise constructed its rosters is that it used to start with a star, right? Whether it be Roberto Donadoni or Yuri Djorkaeff or Branco or more recently Thierry Henry and Tim Cahill, etc. They've always had these huge names, these big personalities, big players with big reputations that they brought over from Europe for the end of their careers, and sort of relied on those guys to make things work. And some years that went well, and some it didn't. But even when it went well, they never got all that far in the playoffs, except for 2008, I believe, when they made the final on sort of a fluky run. Because ultimately they weren't balanced, and the teams that win in MLS aren't the ones that have the most stars, but the ones that have the most depth and the most different weapons. And so the way that this year's team is ultimately different is that it doesn't really have that one star player. They have lots of really good players like Dax McCarty and Bradley Wright Phillips and Sasha Kleston, but they don't have that one guy that everything is built around. But that also means that they're balanced and that they have lots of different guys who can beat opponents, and they have lots of different ways of attacking other teams and of winning games. And so in that sense, it's sort of hard to compare this Red Bull team to teams from the past, and I'm inclined to think that they have a better chance of doing it than they've pretty much ever had before, because they're playing better soccer than they ever had before.
It's true. They really proved that, to echo what you said, they really kind of showed that with their match against DC United last week, where they really looked in charge the whole way, just displaying class on the pitch. And I think you're right. I think we do see a different Red Bull now, and I think we see a Red Bull that will possibly challenge for that title. I'm going to send you over to Rob Rojas. I know Rob has some questions for you, so Rob, take it away.
Yes, hi, Leander. It's nice to have you on the show.
Yeah, my pleasure. Congratulations, guys, on the anniversary.
Thank you so much. I want to talk about a discussion and a subject that you probably don't want to talk about, having recently suffered this situation a few days ago. The Netherlands. They're doing a horrible campaign in the Euro qualifying, having won 3 games, drawn 1, and lost 4. What do you think went wrong? What do you think went wrong after Louis van Gaal left the squad?
Well, I think that's pretty much what went wrong in a nutshell. But the other thing that I think has been a big failing is that Louis van Gaal got to the semifinals of the World Cup. And before him, Bert van Marwijk got to the final of the World Cup in 2010. And I think what those two had in common was sort of an understanding that the Dutch didn't have the players anymore to play the way they always had. They didn't have sort of the midfielders and the wingers and the personnel to be able to hold on to possession and to sort of pick opponents apart with that sort of really systematic, machine-like system that they've had for decades and decades. That's sort of considered the Dutch school that started with total football, and that the Dutch really love in their national teams. And Van Marwijk sort of had his two midfield bruisers, and then he just kind of tried to get a goal or two, and Van Gaal played a 5-3-2 and basically played on the counterattack. Even though it looked very pretty at times, ultimately that was a counterattacking team. And so what happened, even before Van Gaal took the Dutch to the World Cup, they already knew that he was going to leave after the World Cup, and they knew that he was going to sign with Manchester United. So they already appointed Guus Hiddink as his successor before the World Cup, and they already appointed Hiddink's successor, Danny Blind, at that time as well. So they basically appointed the next two successors. And both of them promised, and Blind, by the way, became the second successor because Ronald Koeman, who went to Southampton, turned it down because he was insulted that they wanted him to be the assistant for the first 2 years. And so both of those guys promised that they were going to return the Dutch national team to that possession-oriented 4-4-3 Dutch school, total football-ish type of style. And they just can't do it anymore. And what you see is even in a game against a team like Turkey, which is a solid team but not a great team, they just get overrun in the midfield, and they just can't play that way anymore. So I think they just got a little too arrogant and figured that they could do what they always have and go back to that, and that Van Gaal and Van Marwijk were ultimately wrong. And that's backfired in a really terrible way because it's not looking like the Dutch are going to be at Euro 2016.
If that's the situation, then do you think it's time for the younger generation of Dutch players to get a chance for qualification to the 2018 World Cup?
Well, they still have a chance of qualifying. That's the thing. I think it's a little early to sort of start rebuilding already. But, they're 2 points behind Turkey. They each have 2 games to go. The Dutch have to play the Czech Republic and Kazakhstan, which is in last place, I believe. Turkey has to play, if I'm not mistaken, and let me just double check here.
Czech Republic.
Yes, Turkey has to play Czech Republic and Iceland, which are the first 2 teams in the group. That also means they're already qualified, so maybe they won't be as sharp. But Turkey has a more difficult program. So the Dutch need Turkey to lose one of the games and win both of them themselves. So, they can still get into the playoffs. So, I don't think they're just going to sort of call it a day. But when you do start looking ahead to, even if they still make it to Euro 2016, which I honestly don't think they will, if you do look ahead to 2018, you have to consider that guys like Robin, probably Sneijder and Robin van Persie aren't going to be there anymore. And if you take a really hard look at how they were successful at the 2014 World Cup, there's still so much reliance on those guys, and they're going to have aged out by then. Robin has always been injury prone, but he just keeps on breaking down. And I don't know that, they've got Memphis and they've got Jorginho Wijnaldum, but I don't think that the talent is there to really succeed those guys and to keep the program at the same level.
It's going to be interesting, that's for sure. And I'm just shifting gears to the United States of America. Obviously, they have the big match against Brazil tomorrow night, and then the important playoff against Mexico to see who goes to the Confederations Cup in 2017. Simple enough. Can they do it? Can they beat Mexico?
Can they beat Mexico? Yes, they can. I was actually looking into this. Since Klinsmann has been the manager, the U.S. has played Mexico 6 times. They've won 3 and they've tied 3, and some of those have been on Mexican soil. So I absolutely think they can beat Mexico. They have the good fortune that Miguel Herrera was fired and that Tuca didn't start his tenure off very well in a 3-3 tie with Trinidad and Tobago. So Mexico is a little bit off the rails as well at the moment. Not saying the U.S. is, but they had not the Gold Cup that they would have liked. So I think both teams are going to show up to this game not in their best possible form. The U.S. does play against Brazil, and I think it would be pretty educational to tell us how ready they are. But I think they can beat Mexico. But it's going to be a hard game, and it's going to be in Pasadena. And the last time they played there in 2011, I was there for that. Mm-hmm. And of the 90,000 or so seats, there were probably 85,000, if not more, were taken by by Mexican fans. And U.S. Soccer has said they try to make it a bit more balanced this time, but it's almost like playing an away game on American soil. And that kind of, as you know, is another complicating factor for the Americans. So I think it'll be important for them to get a strong home support.
It's definitely going to be interesting, and I would really, really like to see, and this is probably going to be really doubtful, but I would love to see Ethan Finley on that squad next month.
To see who?
Ethan Finley, Columbus Crew.
Okay, yeah, that might be doubtful, yeah.
Yeah, unfortunately. Thank you, Leander, and I'm going to pass it over to Mike.
Hi, Leander. It's Mike in Toronto. How are you doing tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm doing well, thank you very much. My question for you is on the MLS, and I guess specifically about a couple of players on Toronto FC. In the last couple of years, we've seen a few high-profile U.S. players making their move back to MLS or coming to the MLS. So the two I'd like to ask you about are Michael Bradley and Josie Altidore. Do you think playing in the MLS helps or hinders them as far as the national team goes? Jurgen Klinsmann's opinion aside.
Well, I think it's important for guys like that to be playing. And is there more competition for playing time in Europe? Certainly. But that also means, while that's good on the one hand because it keeps players sharp and it makes them better and they're sort of constantly trying to improve, it also means that they're not playing all the time. So you might have someone called into an important national team game who's played maybe 2 of the last 8 games or something, if he's going through sort of a spell at his club where some other player is in really good form, or he's just been injured and he's working his way back into sort of the squad rotation. So for those guys to be playing all the time, and especially in the case of Altidore, who I think is very dependent on his own confidence to be able to perform, to be in the lineup every single week or twice a week, and to be scoring goals regularly. He's already got 10 this season. Is really important. Michael Bradley, I think, came back stateside, in addition to the huge contract that he was offered that he probably never would have gotten in Europe, because he wanted to be sort of a central and pivotal player on his team. And he is that with Toronto. And even if the competition isn't as good and the opponents maybe aren't quite as strong, the fact that he's having to shoulder a team, the way he sort of does with the national team, is beneficial. So I don't really buy into this notion that the national team is hurt by them playing stateside. I think it depends from player to player, but given that Altidore and Bradley were not playing all that much in Europe, they were playing, but not even 80 or 90% of the game, more like 50 or 60% maybe of the playing time. I think those guys are better off stateside or in Canada, as it may be.
Yeah, no, I agree. As long as you're playing, that's where you need to be.
I think so, and it's about sharpness and it's about rhythm, and especially players like that. One is a playmaker and one is a striker. You need those guys to be getting regular minutes and to be getting regular chances and touches, and there's just no duplicating that in practice, no matter how high the level of that practice is.
Yeah, no, I agree with you completely. Just before I let you go, I wanted to ask you one question. As a long-suffering Toronto FC fan, do you feel they can finally make the playoffs this year? And if so, how far do you think they could go?
I absolutely think they can make the playoffs. I think they're going to do it, too, for the first time. Because if you look at their points per game, they're 1.42. And the next best team, Montreal Impact, is 6 points behind, but their points per game is 1.29. So that's a pretty good gap. They've got a little bit of a cushion. And then if you look behind Montreal, there are a few teams sort of jostling, but they're Philadelphia, Orlando, and New York City, and none of those teams are super convincing this year. Orlando has sort of hit the skids a little bit lately. So I do think they're going to make it. And then the thing, of course, with MLS playoffs is that there's so many one-off games. They've brought in a few more second legs for some of the rounds, but, it's still so it's like a World Cup and it's like a Euro. And there are so many one-off games and so many playoffs where one bounce or sort of one good call or bad call can make the difference that I don't think you can rule out really any team making a deep run in the playoffs. And Toronto, I think, has so much firepower, and especially with Jovinko just tearing up the league, I think they're very well positioned for a playoff run.
From your lips to God's ears, Leander, thanks a lot for being on the show tonight, and take care.
My pleasure.
Again, thanks, Mike. And Leander, it's funny you guys talk about Toronto FC. I still am sticking behind my prediction at the beginning of the season. I picked them to win the championship. So no reason for me to stop thinking that. There have been moments where I've had to doubt it, but I'm not going to back off of it just yet. So, but we'll have to see what happens. And Leander, I do want to thank you for joining us. Coming from someone who enjoys listening to you when you make your appearances on Soccer Morning with Jason Davis, I get to listen to you speak quite often. So,
and a good person and a good man in person.
Oh, okay. Well, and you've had the pleasure of doing that. I haven't. So maybe the next time there's a matchup at Foxborough, not tomorrow night, maybe I'll get a chance to do that. So, Leander, again, thank you again for joining us. Always a pleasure, and love to have you back again sometime soon.
You're very kind, guys. I'm happy to come on.
Thanks again.
Thank you.
And that was Leander Schaerlaeckens joining us. We'll give it 5 minutes just to kind of recap everything in case there is the mystery Ray Hudson phone call. But wow, what a night, guys. I got to catch my breath for a minute here.
Mike, how are you feeling?
I'm doing pretty good here. I'm just trying to tweet some stuff out.
Yeah, no, I for a second I thought you might have passed out. That's what I was worried about. But yeah, just such a great night to celebrate our 2-year anniversary. And there were so many other guests that we could have had and wanted to have. We had folks reach out to us that wanted to come on the show that we couldn't have tonight because we would be here 7, 8, 9 hours tonight. But and unfortunately, I got to go to work in the morning. But it was.
And Rob has school.
Yeah, I have school.
And Rob has school. Believe it or not, yeah, that's the thing. So. So just some closing thoughts. Fantastic guests all night tonight. Especially guys that have helped us grow. And grow this podcast. We've also had wonderful listeners and people in our chat. Ada Dizdar joined us tonight. Jim Hart joined us tonight. I see Homar Hernandez, who actually somebody I hadn't seen before. So definitely welcome to the show. And now I see that he's logged in by Twitter, so somebody I'm going to have to go find and follow. Saw Debbie Santos, saw Luca in the chat as well. Zach, of course, and the great work Zach did on that poster again. I can't thank him enough for that. That was fantastic. And you guys have been here, week in and week out, and you're the reason we're growing, and you guys are also the reason why these guests come back on time and time again and help us, grow the show as well. So, 2 years of a lot of fun, 2 years of a lot of soccer knowledge, 2 years of my wife complaining to me that I watch too much soccer, but two great years nonetheless. How about you guys? Rob, what do you think?
Yeah. They've been
Unfortunately, we didn't see Liam in the chat tonight, so hopefully he gets to listen on archive. Liam's been a good listener to our show.
Absolutely, and Liam is usually the one that gets those trivia questions right, because I keep messing Liam and Luca up, right, Mike?
Yeah. Rob gets some of them, but you haven't fared too well, Joe.
No, but that's okay. That's okay. We'll just deal with it. We'll live with it. So, I don't think we're going to get a Ray Hudson sighting. So I think, and he said he wasn't sure he'd be able to call in anyway on the way home. So. He was going to make the effort, but no worries, because I have his email, and we'll definitely get him on sometime soon. So, gentlemen, without any further ado, let's hit the closing music now.
Thanks for everyone for listening.
All right, let's do it. And we'll make sure that the volume is down nice and low. So, for the 2-year anniversary episode of Low Limit Football, I want to thank again Sid Lowe, Gab Marcotti, Jonathan Johnson, Nima Tavallaey, Brian Sciaretta, Jeremy St. Louis, Jon Arnold, Juan Arango, and Leander Schaerlaeckens. Next week, we'll go back to our normal format, time, and show length. Joining us next week, though, is another big guest who couldn't join us tonight but came on next week, Miguel Delaney from ESPN. So we're going to be really excited to have him on. So for the 2-year anniversary episode of Low Limit Football, I am Joe Usello.
I'm Roberto Rojas.
And I'm Mike Gore.
Thank you, everyone, for listening and joining us tonight, and good night.
Thanks for listening.
Thanks, everyone.